Story 1. My jealous stepsister showed up to my wedding with a neighbor's kid and claimed it was my secret child to humiliate me. She got arrested for kidnapping and was disowned by my dad. My stepsister, let's call her Amanda, 26F, showed up at my wedding last week uninvited with some random kid whom I'd never seen before. My stepsister and I, 27F, haven't ever gotten along, and we stopped speaking to each other as soon as both of us moved out for college. My mother married her father when we were in middle school, and ever since then, she's been a total pain. My father divorced my mother when I was really little and hasn't been a part of our life ever. It wasn't the same for her, though. Her parents got divorced just a couple of years before my stepdad met my mom, and she was one of those annoying kids who believed that my mother was getting in the way of her parents' relationship, even though it was already over and had been for a long time before my mother even met her dad. She didn't like my mother, but she hated me and made it a point to be as nasty to me as she could be. Our parents tried to make us get along for a while, but then they gave up when they realized that there was no way that Amanda was going to be nice to me. She always used to get on my nerves growing up, and when I moved out for college, I was mostly just relieved that I wouldn't have to live in the same house as her anymore. We'd obviously meet each other during the holidays or on birthdays, but we avoided talking to each other whenever we did, and it was okay that way. About a year ago, there was an incident when my mother called me to ask me if I'd be okay with her using some leftover money from my college fund. I landed a scholarship, so I didn't have to spend all the money in my college fund, and a little from my wedding fund to contribute to Amanda's wedding. At the time, I didn't even know that Amanda was getting married, that she was engaged, or even that she had a boyfriend. We hadn't been on talking terms for a really long time, so I said no because I knew that that money could come in handy for me at some point. My mother didn't push it either. She just asked me that question, and when I said no, she said that that's all that she needed to know and then disconnected the call. We didn't talk about it afterward because I forgot about it. I didn't find out until recently that Amanda had to call off her wedding because her father had put his foot down and said that he wasn't going to pay for the fancy and extravagant wedding that she had in mind. She'd expected our parents to pay for all of it, right from the venue to her wedding dress. He did have a certain amount of money set aside, but her demands were way out of his budget. All the choices that she'd made were quite expensive, and the wedding budget was ridiculous and would eat away at his savings as well. So her father said no, and so she requested my mother to contribute as well, since her own mother had said that she had no money, so she couldn't. My mother had a certain amount of money set aside for my wedding, but she didn't want to use that without asking me first and making sure that it was okay with me, and when I told her that it wasn't, she refused to contribute as well. Amanda and her fiancé or his family couldn't afford the wedding on their own, so they ended up calling it off. Another reason that my stepdad and also my mother had said no to paying for the wedding was because Amanda and her fiancé had been together for less than a year before they got engaged, and he knew that this marriage wasn't going to last, which is why he didn't want to spend a bombshell on an unnecessarily fancy wedding when he wasn't even sure about the groom. He made the right call because a few months after their engagement, her fiancé ended up leaving her over some petty fight. She was very upset with our parents for quite some time after that because she believed that had they paid for the wedding, and she and her fiancé were married, he wouldn't have left the way he did. She didn't stop talking to them because she was still pretty financially dependent on them, but she made it clear that she was very upset with them. Then a couple of months ago, I got engaged to my boyfriend of almost 6 years. I talked to my parents about it, and they offered to pay for the wedding, but he and I wanted a simple, small, and intimate ceremony without much of a fuss and said we'd rather use that money for the future. My mother transferred all the money from my wedding fund to me and also the money that's been left over from my college fund, and even my stepdad sent me around $10,000. They told us that we were free to use the money however we pleased and they wouldn't mind even if we had a large wedding, but my husband and I had our mind set on a small wedding. I made the mistake of making a Facebook post a few weeks ago where I thanked everybody who was a part of the wedding in any capacity. Of course, I thanked my parents for all their support, both financial and emotional, and I mentioned both my parents, my mother and my stepfather, because in my head, they were my parents and have been ever since middle school. I don't consider Amanda my sister, but I do consider my stepdad as my dad. It was an emotional post, and a lot of people commented on it, which is how I think it showed up on Amanda's feed as well. She saw that post and presumably got mad because she realized that both our parents were helping me out with the wedding but refused to do the same for her in the past. She didn't do anything at the time, and we only found out exactly how pissed off she was on the day of my wedding. Unfortunately, she showed up at my wedding after the ceremony was over, thankfully, and we were just about to serve lunch. She walked into the venue with some random kid, who I later found out was her neighbor's son, came right up to me, and started screaming at me, accusing me of stealing her dream wedding. She screamed at me and said that she hoped that I was happy now since I'd stolen not just her wedding but also her dad, who now preferred me over her. My husband was standing right beside me, and I was talking to a couple of my cousins when she started yelling at me, and soon enough, everybody was looking at us. My parents came to the rescue and told her to go away before they called the cops. So she decided that she was going to drop a bomb before she left, and she looked at my husband and told him that she'd been keeping a secret for my sake for a really long time now, but she couldn't anymore. Then she pushed the child forward and said that this child was apparently my son with my ex, and I'd given him up for adoption years ago. Now, my husband and I knew that it was not true, and my parents knew that it was not true, but the rest of the guests seemed to be a little scandalized when she said that. So my parents actually had to kick her out, while my husband and I explained that Amanda was just crazy and jealous and that she was coming up with lies to defame me. After we managed to pacify the guests, we got to lunch and cranked up the tune so people would forget about this stupid incident. Once my husband and I got home, we sat down with my parents and his parents, and my parents explained everything that's happened in the past so we'd have context as to why Amanda was so furious. I thought that it was ridiculously childish of her to make such a big deal out of this, especially since I believe that my parents had valid and legitimate reasons not to want to pay for her wedding. First off, it was extremely expensive compared to mine. At least my husband and I had contributed to our own wedding and didn't expect our parents to cover all the expenses. Then secondly, she hadn't even known her ex-fiancé for that long, while my husband and I've been together for a really long time, so my parents knew that it was serious with us. And forgive me for being blunt, they knew that paying for our wedding wouldn't be a waste. So I don't think that it's fair for her to compare my wedding with the one that she had in mind. My parents apologized for it, especially my stepdad, who was pretty embarrassed by what Amanda had done. We didn't blame them anyway because they weren't in control of the situation, and after we discussed it, everybody went home and that was it. But the next day, I received a call from my mother where she told me that Amanda had apparently picked up the kid from her neighbor's house without even informing her and was now being charged with kidnapping. Amanda had called them in the morning to inform them about this and asked her dad for help with money to bail her out and to find a lawyer. It was ridiculous to me that she would go to such an extent just to humiliate me at my wedding because this was all a bit excessive. I did feel a little sorry for her, but I didn't think I owed her any apology. However, ever since she got arrested, her friends have been rallying for her and accusing me of being the bad guy. They seem to think that I'm the one to blame for all this because apparently they believe that my parents have always favored me and say that I'd always been the golden child. I always felt like our parents have treated us equally and have never favored one over the other. Both of us have always had equal opportunities, and I think it's a matter of who was able to make the most of what they had. So the accusation of me being the golden child seems kind of unfair. We went to the same school, and after that, I really think I got a scholarship because I was a better student, which is why I had leftover money from my college fund. So my parents had nothing to do with that, and I've been with my husband for a longer time than she was with her boyfriend, which is also not something that our parents could control. My stepdad has made it very clear to all of us that he would have definitely paid for his daughter's wedding, but she was being unreasonable at the time and was making insane demands that nobody in their right mind would agree to, which is why he backed out entirely. If she really wanted a wedding that badly, then she should have scaled down considerably or at least offered to cover some of the expenses herself along with her fiancé and his family. But she didn't do any of that and just stuck to her ridiculous demands, expecting our parents to do everything for her. The budget was crazy, and so was the fact that she was rushing to marry a guy who she hadn't even known for a year, and that's why our parents weren't on board with the idea of throwing away an exorbitant amount of money on her wedding. That's all. I don't think it's fair for anybody to blame me for her predicament right now, but yet her friends are. Initially, I thought that I wouldn't let it get to me, but it's been a week and I still feel kind of guilty about everything. As far as I know, she's in a lot of trouble legally, and even though everybody's mad at her, my stepdad is trying his best to come to a settlement with the mother of the child whom she brought with her that day. My husband doesn't think that I have anything to feel sorry for, but I just do. I feel guilty for taking money from my stepdad for my wedding and also posting about it online. Update 1. It's been a few days since my last post. I read the comments today and I guess you guys are right. I don't have anything to feel sorry about. Her friends were just doing what most friends do, trying to be there for her, and being there for her always meant putting me down and making me feel bad about myself, so I'd say they did a pretty good job of it. I did feel horrible about everything for a while, but then I spoke about it to my mother and my stepdad most importantly, and both of them said that this wasn't my fault. This was her acting crazy and now having to face the consequences for it. They advised me not to pay any mind to what her friends were saying, which was difficult for me because these were the people that I went to school with and now all of them had turned against me. But there's nothing that I can do about it because clearly they have picked which side they want to be on, and it's not mine. So instead of fighting it and trying to justify myself to everybody, I should just know that I did nothing wrong and go on with my life. Even a couple of people here were accusing me of being their favorite and talking about how my parents had failed Amanda. Let me be clear, I did not give you guys a one-sided story, and I made sure to include even the things that I'd said, the time where I refused to share my funds with her, which is why she couldn't get married since my mother also refused to contribute. That was selfish of me, but to be fair, she'd never tried to be my friend and had always been horrible to me while we were growing up. So I didn't see any reason for me to be nice to her. There were a couple of times when even I would retaliate and be mean to her or make rude comments about her, and our parents would scold both of us for doing that to each other. If I was their favorite child, then they wouldn't have said anything to me, and if we're just talking about the wedding, then I already explained how I got the money for it and why she didn't get the same treatment. She didn't bother to think about our parents and wanted a larger-than-life wedding for herself without spending anything from her own pockets. She should count herself lucky that our parents can afford to support her financially even now, and her father has always tried to be there for her. She is a working woman, but unfortunately, she doesn't take her job seriously, which is why she's been stuck in the same position for a couple of years now, but her lifestyle is such that she can't cope with that sort of income. Neither is she willing to live modestly, nor is she willing to work hard, so she ends up borrowing money from our parents almost every other month. They're already doing so much for her, and yet she wanted them to spend extra money on her for her stupidly extravagant wedding last year, and when they didn't, for very legitimate reasons, she got upset and started acting like she was the victim here, which just shows that she has absolutely no gratitude in her heart. Despite all of this, my stepdad is still trying to bail her out and make sure that she's all right while her friends are acting as if they treated her unfairly. I have worked hard for myself to be an independent woman and go ahead in my career. I studied hard throughout school and then college, and I'm doing the same hard work even now at my workplace, and that is why I don't need to rely on my parents for money. It's not my fault if she didn't try to create the same life for herself despite having the same resources and the same support. So I really don't understand why people think that I'm the golden child when I'm not. I've worked hard for everything that I have, and I'm not going to let people invalidate that by accusing my parents of favoritism. At the end of the day, I know what I did and I know who my parents are as people. Even while her friends are accusing the left and right of being biased and playing favorites, my stepdad is still only bothered about Amanda and her well-being, and that speaks volumes about who's right and who's wrong. It's disappointing to me that even after our parents have done so much for her, she can't see that and only wants to be the victim and beg for sympathy from everyone. It's honestly just so sickening. Update 2. So the child's mother and my stepdad were able to come to a settlement, and she has agreed to drop all the charges in exchange for almost $25,000. It's a lot, but I guess to everybody their child is worth it, and my stepdad's no exception to the rule. He offered to pay her in installments, but she wanted it all up front, and it was quite a hassle for my stepdad, but he managed to get it done somehow, and Amanda is now a free woman. Unfortunately, free doesn't translate to being grateful to our parents, and she still has an attitude. My mother told me that she hadn't reached out to them to even thank him yet, and she was furious while she was talking to me about it. It's been a couple of days, and Amanda knows exactly what happened, yet she hasn't even tried to thank them. I knew she was a disgusting human being, but this is just too low even by her standards. My mother said that my stepdad is trying his best to hide his feelings about it and hasn't said a word, but she knows that he's hurting deep down. My husband and I are supposed to leave for our honeymoon in 2 days, but we've decided that we're going to pay my family one last visit before we take off for the next couple of weeks to make sure that my stepdad's all right. He is a good man and he deserves a better daughter than Amanda, which is why I exist, and I'm going to check up on him and make sure that he's okay. At least on the bright side, Amanda's friends have stopped whining about how her parents never stood up for her and always preferred me now that it's all over. All of them knew that they were lying, but that didn't stop them, and I just really wish that I'd said something to them, but now all the posts are gone, so it's too late for me to say anything. But I know that this is not over yet because Amanda is definitely going to have something to say eventually, and when she does, her friends will start rallying for her again, and then I will not keep my mouth shut like I did this time. I wouldn't have stayed quiet this time either, but I just got married and I wanted to enjoy that honeymoon phase for a while. It also didn't feel right to pick on her while she was at such a low point. Also, my parents were worried sick about her, so there were a couple of reasons that I didn't say anything or indulge in the drama this time. But if she says anything out of line about me ever again, then I'm definitely going to put her in her place, and I'm sure my parents will not have any problems with that either after this. Update 3. Hey! So it's been almost a month and my husband and I just returned from our honeymoon. We came back home a couple of days ago, and boy, has it been a roller coaster ride of emotions already. To start with, Amanda is no longer a part of our family. She told everybody that she had severed all ties with us through a public announcement on social media, which I didn't see and was not told about because I was on my honeymoon and I wasn't really checking social media or people's texts unless it was important, which this decidedly was not. So I didn't find out about that until recently. It was a relief for me, honestly. My stepdad was kind of bummed out about it, but eventually he got over it, which is what my mother told me. Amanda had visited them a couple of days after I left for my honeymoon, but it wasn't to thank them like they'd been expecting. Instead, she actually had the guts to ask to cut me off or she would stop talking to them. She gave them an ultimatum and said that they had to choose between me and her because she was apparently sick of me taking away everything from her that she deserved. I think I touched upon that in my first update, and the people who've been following the story would know that she's just making up excuses and it's all just a load of baloney. I haven't taken away anything from her. She just doesn't have anything of her own to begin with, not even a brain, and thinks that she can just get away with it by accusing me and blaming me for all her failures, even if it has nothing to do with me. But our parents weren't going to tolerate that and told her that if it came down to that choice, then they would pick me because Amanda was ridiculously entitled, spoiled, and selfish, and they could not put up with her anymore. My mother didn't say much to her because she felt like if she tried to talk to Amanda, then her head would explode out of sheer frustration. So she said to her that she was ungrateful and she had no interest in entertaining her nonsensical behavior anymore. And Amanda told her that since she wasn't her actual mother, she didn't care about what my mom had to say to her, and then turned to her father and started speaking to him instead. My mother obviously felt very insulted, so she left the room and only came back out when she heard yelling. Once my mom came back into the living room, Amanda looked at her and shrieked at her father and told him to have a nice life with his new family, and then walked out of the house and slammed the door shut behind her. Later on, my mother found out that the reason she left the house was because my stepfather had told Amanda the same things that my mother had already said to her, and she couldn't handle the fact that her father was also choosing me now, so she walked out. If my parents didn't have a favorite back then when we were growing up, they definitely do now, and I don't even think it's my fault anymore because she made sure that I became their favorite by behaving so badly with them. She showed my parents that she had no respect for them and didn't even seem to love them because if she actually loved our parents, then she wouldn't behave the way that she did. She was rude to my mom because she is not Amanda's biological mother, but there's no excuse for being so cruel to your own biological father, which is what she was. She used him to support herself financially for ages, and now that she thinks she has a couple of friends who will look out for her, she thinks she can abandon her dad and go off on her own. I honestly wish her the best as long as she stays away from our family and doesn't bother us ever again because she truly is the worst and I for one am glad to be rid of her. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Caught my wife cheating with my employee while I was stuck in the hospital with 2 broken bones. So I exposed her affair to everyone and divorced her. Hey guys, I, 40M, have been married to my Christine, 39F, for about 10 years now, and we have 1 child, my lovely daughter, who is 9 years old. Like any marriage, we've had ups and downs, a lot of downs to be honest, but we've come through everything fine. There's been no infidelity, but there's been a basis for trust issues on both our parts, I will admit. However, in the last 2 years or so, I've done my best as a husband, and I think I've maintained a good record. My wife and I have a good life in the bedroom. We're getting older, but things haven't dropped off too significantly from back when we met. I've always been very thankful for that much because I've been involved with women who might as well have been celibate, and it was frustrating, to say the least, because no amount of communication fixed anything. So, a woman who actually wants to roll around in bed is a blessing to me. I own a business. Before I met my wife and when we got married, she eventually joined me at the helm to run things. About 2 weeks ago, I got into an accident on my way to work. I got T-boned at a red light and woke up in the hospital with a broken femur and humerus. Yeah, needless to say, that wasn't fun. Once it was certain there wasn't any internal damage, I was let home in 2 days with a cast on my arm and my leg. Obviously, my movement was impaired quite a lot, but I was able to find my way around the house with a lot of stumbling and leaning on things. Of course, there were certain things I was unable to do, and Christine had to help me with them. For about the first week, she seemed to be fine with it, and every time I asked her if I wasn't too much of a burden, she'd say no with a big smile. However, once it crossed over into the second week, I started to notice a bit of a change in her attitude. To be honest, when I said our life in the bedroom is good, it's really good, and we usually don't go a full week without anything going on. So, my first assumption was that it might have been because of that, especially because I was starting to feel my body craving it, too. Again, when I asked her if I was being a burden, she said no. But this time she seemed more short with me. I asked her straight up whether it was because of the lack of action between us, but she said it wasn't and left the room promptly after that. At that moment, I really felt it was, but I felt like, being married as long as we were, she'd be able to answer me truthfully with a question like that. My mouth and one of my hands still work, so I feel like we'd be able to work things out. I mean, I had the urge to ask her to help me blow a load, but she's already doing a lot for me, so I decided not to bother, at least until I can't take it anymore. Now, here's the thing. Yesterday, she came back home after managing the business on my behalf that day, and she was very clearly in a much better mood than she was all the other days. I could describe her mood as bubbly. Now, I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but since I feel like her mood before was because we couldn't be intimate, I'm suddenly overthinking whether she was able to get somebody else to take care of that side of things for her. I mean, she's never cheated on me. Does anyone ever know for sure? And apart from that sudden change in her mood, I wouldn't have anything else to use to suspect her. She could have had a massage or heard some good news, but talking to her, there didn't seem to be any obvious reason for her sudden happiness. So, before I do anything rash, not like I can with the way I am right now, I want to hear all of your opinions. Should I try and do some digging, or should I just assume that she was just happy for some other reason? I mean, I feel like I might be jumping to conclusions after such a long time knowing each other, but let me know what you all think. Please. Update 1. Hey everyone. It's been about 3 weeks since my last post, but I'm back with an update. A lot of you said I should go ahead and check her phone. Partners should be allowed to check each other's phones if they have nothing to hide. I know she can check mine as much as she wants because I have never had anything to hide. Well, I eventually did check, and boy, did I find things. Anyway, I wasn't about to ask her to hand it over because that would give her the chance to delete any evidence. I had to gain access to it at a time when I would have enough time to search all through things and potentially save any proof I found. Just so you know, after that day when she was all happy, she slowly went back into a mood, and then another day was all bubbly again. It was the third time that she came back all happy that I got my chance. She was chewing gum, but I was sure I could smell a slight scent of booze following her. She also didn't kiss me as she got back home, but she was happy. I think it might have been whatever she drank, but it didn't take long for her to fall asleep, and she left her phone right beside her in bed. I've never checked Christine's phone before, but I was very anxious as I did it, because I was scared she could wake up at any moment, and I'd have to start trying to explain myself. But the anxiety from not knowing whether she was cheating on me was honestly a lot worse, so I pushed through. There were no photos or videos of her with anyone unusual, but it was when I went to her messaging app that I saw an unread message from an Alex. And squinting at the profile picture, I saw it was the same Alex I knew that worked for me. The thing is, this normally wouldn't have been an issue since she was manning the workplace at the moment, but the message was "gotten home," with a kiss emoji at the end. I opened the message immediately despite the last one being unread, and I went through everything up until the point where I had the accident. Things were very formal until about a day before the day that my wife had come home all bubbly the first time. He had started flirting with her heavily, and she returned the energy. He must have gotten some kind of green light at work that day to come on so strong, and it just made it clear how little I knew while I was at home recovering. I noticed that on the 3 occasions that my wife had come back in a brighter mood, Alex always asked her if she had gotten home, but he never did that on other days. Between those days there was some flirting here and there, but nothing extreme, though it might as well have been. I took several pictures with my phone and put her phone back. This was about 2 days ago, and I really don't know what to do. She didn't seem any different the next day, so I don't think she suspected I touched her phone. Probably because she was tipsy. But I really don't know what to do. I have all the evidence I need to come to a very solid conclusion that my wife has cheated on me with my employee at least 3 times. But how do I proceed from here in a way that actually makes sense? Do I just say divorce and figure everything out from there? The thing is, I feel so hurt. We haven't had a super rosy marriage, but for the most part, it has been good. But cheating never seemed to be a fear of mine. But after I have an accident, that's when she decides to cheat on me? I have struggled to act normal around her, but I really don't know if I can take it any longer. I need this to end, but I can't let it just end with a divorce. I need more than that. I need to feel satisfied. Please, I've been trying to think of things I can do, but my mind is failing to put 2 thoughts together. I'll be waiting to hear what advice you all might have for me. Update 2. Wow, time flies. It's been a long time since my last update, but after posting it, I think I must have read through every single comment there. Thank you to everyone for all the kind words and suggestions, and I have to say they certainly contributed to my approach. The first thing I did was find a divorce lawyer. I didn't pay a retainer at that time, but just wanted to know what I could about his services. At that point, I stupidly still felt like there could be an explanation for what I had read on her phone, so I decided to confirm her before making anything final. It was a bit easier for me to move around on my own, so I told her that I wanted to follow her to work to see how things were going and say hi to the employees. She tried to weakly convince me to just stay at home and that she had everything under control, but at that point, I knew nothing was going to stop me from going. So, about an hour later, I was in the passenger seat, and we were heading to our business location. Most of the guys were super happy to see me, Alex included, though he seemed a lot more awkward than the rest of them. My wife also didn't seem to be super happy that I was there. Towards the end of the workday, I called for Alex to come into my office, and I did that when my wife was somewhere close by. I noticed her freeze up as I did that, and she actually followed Alex into my office, which she normally wouldn't do if it was anyone else. But I didn't tell her to leave. Both of them seemed shifty, though I might have been imagining it. I only asked Alex something about a client we had been dealing with before the accident happened, and I could actually see the fear disappear from his body as he realized I was just asking about something relatively trivial. Once the day ended, I headed back home with my wife, and she was slightly talkative, maybe because she realized, or at least assumed, that she hadn't been found out. I felt like I had more than enough suspicion at that point to be very direct with her, and I decided that I would do it the next day when she returned from work. Perhaps fortunately for me, the next day was another one of those days where her mood seemed to be better than usual, which triggered me because it made me assume she had just been intimate with my employee just minutes before. She was probably made bolder because she felt she had confirmation that I didn't suspect it one bit, but that was part of what gave me the courage to confront her. Minutes after she walked in, I asked her to sit across from me, and I asked her straight up, "Are you cheating on me with Alex?" She froze, but it wasn't for long, and then she said, "Yes." Right after that, she stood up and headed towards the kitchen. I told her to sit back down and that I wasn't done, but she still went to the fridge to get a silly yogurt cup, and only then did she come back. Honestly, I could already tell that she didn't seem to be remorseful based on her behavior. Why did you think that was a good idea? And then she went into explaining how she had needs as a woman, and I wasn't providing those needs for her. I pointed out right there that I had been in a freaking accident. I still had casts on, and her major concern was that there was no sex. I told her that if she had told me how dear her needs were, we could have found a way to sort things out, at least until I was healed, but she only shook her head and said, "It wouldn't have been the same." Honestly, in that moment, I was actually lost for words. I was expecting crying and pleading, and obvious guilt, but the stupid woman in front of me was trying to justify her cheating. I asked her directly whether she was sorry, and she told me no. She repeated again that she had needs and I couldn't provide them, and that wasn't her fault, that she wouldn't deny herself pleasure because I had gotten yourself T-boned by an SUV. Yeah, I hate to admit it, but I lost all cool that I had at that moment. I struggled to my feet and walked over to her in an intimidating way. I didn't raise a fist or anything, but as I approached her, she stood up and shoved me hard. I lost balance and hit our wooden coffee table on the way down. I hit my shoulder. Nothing was broken, I confirmed eventually, and I lay on the floor in pain. A few minutes later, I heard the front door close and her car start up and drive away. Yeah, my wife, my soon-to-be ex, knocked me over and didn't even check if I was okay. I literally had 2 casts on. It was a few minutes before I could struggle up onto the couch, and my shoulder was in a lot of pain. The first thing I did was call the police because I actually lost all respect and love for her in that moment. I was seeing red. Apparently, the noise of our argument had woken up my daughter, and she was hiding near the top of the stairs. When she saw me get pushed, she started crying when she saw me in pain, and it broke my heart. She kept asking what had happened between me and her mom, but I really didn't know what to tell her. Eventually, the police came, took a report from me, and I was taken to the hospital along with my daughter for an X-ray, though fortunately, there was no lasting damage to my shoulder. I mean, considering I was on the way to recovery, I'd have been pissed if I broke something else. As soon as I got back home that night, I put my daughter to bed and sent a message to the divorce lawyer, telling him that I was ready to go ahead with things. Christine hasn't come back home in the 3 days since that happened, and I haven't even contacted her. My daughter keeps asking where her mom is, but I had to make up a stupid excuse that she went to visit her sister. At this point, it's actually war, and I think I have everything I need to have things collapse for Christine. She wasn't sorry for cheating on me, but my goal is to make her sorry. Update 3. As I am writing this, which should be the final update in my story, I am doing so with a big smile on my face. I know it has been months since my last update, but if you're big fans of the sensation we call Schadenfreude, you're going to like this one. I know I do. The first thing that I did was send text messages to every single one of my Christine's relatives that I knew, from her parents to a cousin that I had only met twice. I even sent it to the friends whose numbers I had because I was pissed. I didn't write a single thing that wasn't true, and I even sent them the pictures I had taken of the flirting between her and Alex back then. Some of them responded and some of them didn't. The ones who responded were more sympathetic, and I assumed most of those who didn't were on Christine's side. My job there was done. Whether they took her side or not, I made sure her scumbag behavior was well documented. After that, I went into work and I met Christine there. She was shocked to see me, probably thinking I was too crushed to do anything. It was barely 10 seconds before I pointed at her and Alex, the employee she had been cheating on me with, and told them they were both fired. She used to be my wife, but she was merely an employee. Her name was nowhere in the paperwork for the business, and I'm glad I had never brought her on to that extent. Alex was surprised by the suddenness of it all, but he couldn't argue because he knew he was guilty. He had worked for me for 3 years, and he was surely going to have a fun time trying to use me as a reference for whatever his next job was going to be. Meanwhile, Christine looked furious. She walked up to me. Honestly, I was scared I was going to get hit again, though that would have worked nicely for me. And when she was at arm's length, I sprung the divorce papers on her. Her face turned red because our employees were there, but I didn't care. She snatched the papers from me and marched out of the place. The rest of the day was awkward, and I had to deal with a lot of cursing and texts from her later once she realized the full extent of people I had told about her cheating. Again, my story doesn't end there. It still gets good. Remember the assault? I had a police report and a hospital report, and I went to the police station at the close of business to report things. I told them I wanted to press charges. To skip through things a bit, my divorce lawyer was able to help me structure the case beautifully. As a complete bonus, and considering this came after I confronted her for cheating, she was unremorseful. I was injured, she left me there, and my daughter witnessed it. She got a week in jail and mandatory anger management classes. I hate that my little girl had to get a bit involved, but for me, It was worth it. The criminal record gladdened my heart. Then we got to the actual divorce proceedings. These lasted a long time, especially because Christine was being extremely stubborn throughout the thing, but ultimately, it was a breeze because there was way too much documented proof of bad behavior on my ex-wife's part. I mean, she had assaulted me, which she didn't deny. She had cheated on me, which she didn't deny. And she was very clearly unremorseful about either one of them. My daughter had to see her father assaulted, and again, that killed me. Now, I did mess up by firing her before I finalized the divorce, so I do have to pay a manageable amount of alimony, but only for 5 years. She's not a part of the business I built from the ground up. I have custody of my daughter because her mother's ability to control her temper and not bring strange men around my daughter is in question. And I get to keep the house because why uproot my little girl? I got to expose my wife's behavior to all her friends and give her a shiny criminal record. I honestly didn't set out to do all of this, but she made it work for me since she's just naturally a horrible person. I wish I had seen it earlier, but it is what it is. I'm just glad the story is over and my daughter is safe with me. Life goes on and I'll try and rebuild eventually, but for now I'm happy with the way things went, and I hope you all are too. Edit. By the way, Alex apparently had the balls to put my name down as a reference, and I made sure to professionally outline all his shortcomings as an employee, including the fact he may try to be inappropriate with the female partners of higher-ranking employees. It was fun to hear, "Oh wow, thank you for letting us know that," from the person on the other end. I guess no evil goes unpaid. Now on to the next story. Story 3. I left my fiancé when I overheard him and his family mocking me for asking questions. So I confronted him, took off my ring, and called off the wedding. I, 23F, am engaged to John, 24M. We've been together for 5 years and want to get married in July 2025. I always thought that his family liked me because we get along well. He has 2 older brothers, 26M, 29M, both married. Honestly, I was very excited to have them all as my in-laws. They were always kind to me. Some kind of important information. About a year ago, when I was scrolling on Instagram, I saw a profile that was kind of cringy but in a cute way. It was an older woman's profile who shared inspirational quotes. I remember one particular post, and it was something along the lines of, "Only stupid people pretend to know everything. Don't pretend, just ask." Honestly, this quote changed me in a lot of ways. Before that, I was always worried that I might embarrass myself if I didn't know something. After reading the quote, I realized that if I always pretend that I know everything, then I'll miss out on actually getting to learn about things. So, I decided to change my habits and start admitting that sometimes I genuinely don't know what someone is talking about. Someone is talking about the war in Kosovo? Okay, sure, but first let me ask some questions so I can really understand what we're talking about. And I ask a lot of questions. Sometimes I even open the Notes app and write down some questions that I later want to find answers to. These are my latest ones. 1. How does time work in a black hole? 2. Why do some snails have shells and others don't? 3. What food is okay for ducks? 4. How does a light bulb work, the old ones with gas inside them? 5. Does everyone see colors the same way, and how can we know that? Sorry for the long introduction, but it was kind of necessary for understanding what kind of person I am. I know that sometimes I might come across as annoying. Now on to the problem. His parents hosted a small barbecue last weekend, only for the family, so it was the mom, 54F, dad, 59M, brothers, 26M, 29M, and their wives, 27F, 27F. I was the last person who showed up because I had to work late. I entered the house, and when I was walking toward the back of the house into the backyard, I heard John's mom talking about me. To be honest, she wasn't talking about me, more like mocking me. I heard her say in a high-pitched voice, "How does the sun work? Where should I put the fork? Why does nobody like me? How do I wipe my ass?" I just stood there. I had this sinking feeling. I couldn't move. So, I just stood there and I heard them all laughing. One of the wives said, "I actually don't mind her always asking questions. I think it's cute." And it made me feel hopeful that they would say something like, "Yeah, sure, we're just playing. We love that." But none of them did. Instead, the mom replied, "She's not cute. She's just stupid." After that, they laughed again. I heard John laughing. My heart kind of broke in that moment because he didn't even say one positive thing. He didn't defend me, he just laughed. I quietly turned around and left the house. I texted John that I got sick and had to stay home. Now, I'm wondering how I should approach this situation. We live together, and I've been sleeping in the guest bedroom for now. I'm using the excuse that I don't want him to get sick from being around me. I can't ignore him forever, and I can't pretend to be sick anymore because it's been too long. I'm not sure how to proceed. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. I'm considering talking to them about this, but I'm also worried that they won't be honest with me. I can't marry him if he really thinks I'm stupid, but I also can't marry into a family who thinks so little of me. But maybe it was a joke and I shouldn't take it so seriously. I'm so torn apart, and every day I convince myself a bit more that it's okay and sometimes we should all laugh about ourselves. Now I feel like I'm just going crazy. I would really appreciate some advice. Edit. There are many comments saying that they cannot stand people like me. I agree that sometimes I can be a bit too much with the questions, but with that being said, I still think I'm within reason. I don't do it around people I just met. I rarely do it at parties or other gatherings. I usually do it with people who are close to me, who I think wouldn't judge me, or with people who specifically have knowledge about something and are willing to share it. If I'm a part of a conversation, I'm not rude and I'm not interrupting. I usually just ask 1 or 2 questions. If a discussion is about climate change, I'm not asking about monkeys, if you know what I'm saying. I'm also not a complete dumbass. I don't ask questions that would generally be considered dumb to other people. Those I just write in the notes and check answers later on the internet. I'm capable of reading, so I make good use of it. But after all, I still do ask questions a lot. Comments. Comment 1. They were laughing at you behind your back. If he says anything along the lines of, "That is how they are, get over it, it is not a big deal, you are too sensitive," or anything that excuses their behavior, then he is really asking you to accept it. He's asking you to give your permission for it to continue, and your silence is your permission for it to continue. If they can't say it to your face, that tells you a world of information about the kind of people they are. If you want to see how things really are, confront them about this and see what happens. Their reactions will tell you everything you need to know about all of them and will be helpful in making such a big decision. It will show you how they deal with conflict, which will be a good indication of what you will be getting yourself into should you marry this guy. They will be a part of your life for as long as they are alive. You need to know if you can tolerate being a part of his family. Comment 2. Tell John what you heard. Tell him of all the things you heard, his reaction hurt you the most. Tell him you cannot believe how cruel his mother was, and his laughter and failure to stand up for you was like a knife in the heart. Then ask him, "Why should I marry you? Someone who is comfortable laughing at me when they think I can't hear them?" You know, I ask questions to better understand something. The smartest person in the room is the person who knows they don't know everything and is not afraid to ask. When I heard everyone, all I could hear was ignorance, unkindness, a lack of grace, and no love whatsoever. How very graceful of you and your family to mock someone. Frankly, I'd call off the wedding. Comment 3. I'm sorry you experienced that. I'm sorry his mom is a terrible person. I'm sorry you're hurting, but you're not overreacting and you're not oversensitive. Those were mean things to say. Mocking is not okay. Not only that, but she's been lying to your face this whole time and acting kind and accepting when she's cruel and hateful. The rest of them co-signed her cruelty with their passiveness and laughter. Don't marry into that family. But here is some advice. Find your voice, stand up for yourself, learn to handle conflict head-on. Avoidance will bring you nothing but pain and suffering. Work on yourself before your next relationship. Become the you who would confront your fiancé immediately when he got home. Become the person who doesn't lie and say they are sick to avoid confrontation or sleeps in the guest room to avoid showing your hurt. Have the confrontation. Show the hurt. Expect to be treated with kindness and honesty. Invite that by being kind to yourself and being honest with others about how you feel. Do all that, and your next relationship will be much healthier. This one would have ended in heartbreak and divorce eventually. Leave and feel good about it. Comment 4. Tell John you heard his mom talking shit and laughing. It has hurt you beyond measure. You can no longer trust him to be the partner you thought he was. I'd then message the brother's wife who sort of stood up for you and let her know that you appreciate her being the one to say something nice about you. Let her know you have decided to end the relationship with John. Let them handle the fallout. John will know, the brother's wife will know, and it will get out. Then the mom can eat a shit sandwich. And I promise, if she goes the route of, "Oh, I was only kidding," or she can't take a joke, when she is alone with her thoughts, she will know she is an awful person whose mouth negatively impacted her child's life and ruined it. Update. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to the people who reached out to answer my questions about black holes, snails, ducks, light bulbs, and other stuff. I would love to have you as my friends. For the other people who said I should just shut up, I don't really care if you find me annoying or hard to be around. I'm okay with that. I don't exist to please everyone. I'm just here for a good time, have my own interests, and learn. I didn't expect my post to gain so much attention, but I'm so grateful for the advice. Most of you told me to break up with him and at the very least confront him, so that's what I decided to do. You gave me a push and confidence to do it. But before I did that, I texted the wife of John's brother, the one who said she liked me asking questions. I asked if we could meet up for coffee. She said, "Sure." We met, and I didn't see the point in pretending to her that I didn't hear their conversation. So, after some small talk, I just said, "I heard you all talking about me during the barbecue." She immediately got sad and said she feels embarrassed. She explained that it wasn't a joke, wasn't out of context, that it was just mean and hurtful. She said she's sorry for not defending me more, but I said that it's okay and I understand. I told her that I don't blame her for anything and just wanted to make sure that I understood the situation and saw it for what it really was. And it really was laughing about me behind my back, just bullying at this point. I just had to confront John. In my last post, so many comments were saying that he will probably try gaslighting me, and you were right. We were having dinner together for the first time since the barbecue happened because before, I tried my best to avoid him. Yes, I know, not very mature of me, but other than you guys, I don't really have a strong support system. My family and best friends are hundreds of kilometers away. I only have 2 good friends here. I was so stressed. I thought I'm gonna pass out. My legs were shaking and I was terrified because I knew deep down that this is the moment when my 5-year relationship goes down the drain. I looked him in the eyes and asked, "How does the sun work?" He looked confused, so I followed with, "Where should I put my fork? Why does nobody like me?" At this point, realization hit him and he started nervously laughing. I said, "I was there and I heard them." After the initial shock passed, he got mad. He said it's rude to eavesdrop. I said, "It's rude to bully people." He tried telling me that it was just a joke, that I shouldn't be so uptight, that it really was funny. I said that I didn't find it funny and went to the guest room to calm down. He started panicking. He was asking me to please talk to him. He was much more apologetic and said that he will be 100% honest with me. I asked if his mother made similar comments before the barbecue. He said, "Yes." I asked him if he ever defended me. He said he tries to. I don't know if I believe him. He told me he loves me and respects me. I don't know if I believe it either. I said that I love him too, but I need a break. He's all I've ever known. He was my first and only partner. I have no outside perspective of this. I have no experience. I need a moment to think. I will be going to my friend's house for a while to think everything through. The apartment has his name on the lease anyway. After I gathered some of my things and left, he kept texting me nonstop. He tried calling, but I didn't respond. I was very hurt because he tried to belittle my feelings and only later, when he realized that I might break up with him, started apologizing. The next day, I decided to give him another chance to explain himself and I came back to the apartment. He seemed very sad and tired. He said that he told his mother that I overheard them. I said, "I don't care. It's your time to step up and show me that you care." I'm not interested in an apology from his mother. I'm already done with her. I can't put up with this behavior and mocking me like we're in primary school. I saw a comment saying that probably her ego is hurting. I think it's true. She never got the chance or never had the desire to have an education. She is a very good homemaker, but outside of that, she doesn't have many interests of her own. If I'm asking her about making tomato soup, she will be talking for 30 minutes, lecturing me about adding enough sugar but not too much. She will lecture anyone who is willing to listen. But anytime someone is talking about something she's not familiar with, she gets defensive and tries to imply that nobody cares about that, and if it's not relevant to her, it shouldn't be discussed. Once again, he tried telling me that I should relax because it was only a joke, and at this point I had enough. I took off my ring and told him that his behavior is a joke and I can't be the punchline. I told him that I wish him and his family the best and to look in the mirror to check if they really are as superior as they think they are. I said I'm going to be back with my friend soon to pick up the rest of my stuff and to not contact me again unless it's about moving my things out. And that's it. I'm done. Thank you all for the advice. Without you, I wouldn't have the confidence to leave this man. I know I deserve better. I can't be with someone who can't stand up for me, and I wouldn't be able to feel comfortable around his family. So I'm done with the relationship. I hope they will treat his next girlfriend better. Thank you again, Reddit, for the advice. Comments. Comment 1. OP, keep on being curious, not judgmental. OP, same. I absolutely love that show. I watched it with my ex, and it's funny that he didn't like Ted and thought that his character was not relatable and silly. TBH, we all should have Ted's strength and positivity sometimes. Comment 2. OP, your ex-MIL can still go and get an education. Many have and there is still time. That's no excuse for what she did. And her saying that and acting like that shows how uneducated she is. I think so too. I believe it's never too late to start learning something new and continue education. In my uni, there was an old lady in her 70s who recently graduated, and everyone was just so proud of her. In my country, university is free, so the barrier to entry isn't as bad as in the US, for example. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Dill listened to my private call about our will and demanded inheritance for her kids from previous marriage and is now threatening to keep our grandkids from US unless we give in. Hello, everybody. I am 66F, and I have been married to my husband, 68M, for over 40 years. We have a 40-year-old son together, and he recently got married to our daughter-in-law, whom we will call Janet. Janet is also in her 40s, and she met my son through work a couple of years ago. They had been dating for 3 years, and about 6 months ago, they finally got married after a year-long engagement. Now, my son has been married before. I even have 2 grandkids, a 16-year-old grandson and a 14-year-old granddaughter. Unfortunately, my son's ex-wife passed away a few months after my granddaughter was born. She had a lot of health issues anyway, and it had been advised that she not go through with a second pregnancy, but she chose to have my granddaughter anyway. Unfortunately, she couldn't survive for long because her health was failing. That was a long time ago, and we had made our peace with it, but my son didn't date anybody for a really long time after his first wife passed away, and I could understand why. They were really in love, and he was extremely happy with her. To have all that taken away at such a young age couldn't have been easy for the poor boy, but he was still very good for all of us and his children and made sure that he was there for them at all points of time. Sure, he had help from us, but he made sure to always show up for his kids and was just an overall great dad. The first time that my husband and I saw him with Janet, we felt like he was finally going to be happy again. There is something about the way he was acting with her that made us hopeful that he would finally be happy with her and have a complete family again. Of course, we were aware that nobody would ever be able to replace his first wife, but for so long, he had just been content with life. When he introduced us to Janet for the first time, she seemed shy and introverted and didn't talk much, but she seemed like a good woman. Just like my son, she had also been married before and had 3 kids of her own. She had a 15-year-old twin girl and a 13-year-old son, but her ex-husband was still very much involved in their kids' lives, and they had been co-parenting for almost 10 years since their divorce. Apparently, they got married really young but quickly figured out that they were not meant to be with each other and were just not compatible. So they called it quits soon after her youngest son was born. I had met her kids as well, and I don't mean to sound rude, but her kids were not nearly as well behaved as they should have been. They were all quite unruly and had no manners at all when I met them, and they seemed to not respect anybody at all, not even their mother. Suffice it to say, it was not a nice first meeting, and they did not leave a good impression on us, but they were not my grandkids, so it didn't matter to me how they behaved. I was just glad that my son's kids were not like that. Janet's kids would only spend the weekends at my son's house, and I was worried that my grandkids might pick up bad habits. Janet's kids were really disrespectful and disobedient, and there was no need for them to become like them. It's not like I had anything against her or her kids personally. I just didn't think they were good influences on the family. For instance, her younger son had already started smoking, and we had even caught him a couple of times, but she just said that he would grow out of that habit. Her daughters were really mean and were constantly cussing when they spoke, even when it was their mother that they were talking to. It might sound really traditional and kind of old-fashioned, but I don't think it was nice. I had advised Janet several times to talk to her kids about this and reprimand them, but she had a different approach and believed that if she just let them be, they would grow out of these habits eventually on their own. Honestly, I didn't see that happening, and I really believe that parents at some point have to intervene to make the kids better. But at the end of the day, these were her kids, and I couldn't tell her what to do. But I think she didn't like the fact that I was trying to advise her, and that kind of soured things between us. So we hadn't been on good terms for a really long time, and even at the wedding, she had been cold towards me and my husband. My son did pick up on it and asked me about it several times, and I told him why I thought she was being cold towards us. It was anybody's guess, and apparently, when he had talked to her about it, she had said that she was being perfectly normal with us and she didn't have anything against us, even though her behavior very clearly reflected the exact opposite. But my husband and I are quite old and did not have time for such silly mind games and ego clashes. We just wanted to quietly spend time with our loved ones, and that was it. We did not want to get involved in whatever drama Janet was building up in her own head. So I told my son not to worry about our relationship and just to focus on his marriage. If Janet didn't like us, we would just stay out of her way. It was very simple for us because we didn't want to complicate things, and we decided that whenever we wanted to meet our son or our grandkids, we were just going to call in advance and tell them that we were coming over. In case Janet was at home, we would do our very best to stay out of her way and only speak to her if she wanted to talk to us. Other than that, we would have no extra interactions, and we were fine with that. She kept to herself and we kept to ourselves. But then, about 2 weeks ago, Janet invited us over to their house and said that she wanted to discuss something very important with us. Now, this was weird because my son was not at home at the time. He was away on a business trip, and I couldn't imagine Janet having anything to say to us in his absence. Even our grandkids were spending the weekend with their friends, so it was just going to be my husband and I and Janet. She said that this was going to be a private conversation, so she would appreciate it if we didn't talk to my son about it. We figured that she was probably building up to a surprise or something, so we went over to her place not having any idea about what she was going to tell us. Once we were there, we made some small talk and it was relatively pleasant. However, after we had talked for about 15 minutes, she came straight to the point and stopped beating around the bush. She told us that she had invited us over because she wanted to discuss the inheritance since she had recently heard my son and I discussing it over the phone. And she was right. Just a couple of days before he left for the business trip, we were talking on the phone, and I had told him that my husband and I wanted to review our will because we wanted to make a couple of changes and add some assets and properties that we wanted to specifically leave to certain people, including my son and my grandkids. So we had been discussing that, and he had told me that he was going to put me in touch with his lawyer to review everything because the lawyer that my husband and I had for the past couple of years had moved away to spend more time with his children and had retired, so he wasn't practicing anymore and we needed somebody. I guess that's the conversation that Janet had overheard and invited us over to discuss it. I thought that she was going to tell us that she wanted to be included in the will, and I was already mentally prepared to tell her no because I wasn't going to leave anything to her. I was going to leave whatever I wanted to my son, and if he wanted to split it with her, that would be his choice. But it wasn't as though my husband and I were close to Janet, so we didn't see any reason for us to leave anything to her specifically. However, she went a different way altogether and told us that she had been thinking about it for a while and had come to the conclusion that she just had to tell us what my son allegedly felt about all of this. I had been expecting her to talk about herself, but when she dragged my son into it, I was really put off because on the phone call, my son didn't sound like he disagreed with anything. He had already known the contents of my will for a long time. He hadn't mentioned any changes that he wanted to make, and neither had he asked me anything about it. So I didn't know what Janet was talking about. She went on to tell me that apparently after that conversation with me, My son had told her that he was not satisfied with the contents of my will. He wanted to talk to me about the inheritance, but he couldn't bring himself to do so without sounding ungrateful, and that's where she came in. He had told her to talk to us about it before he left for the trip and had come up with a bunch of conditions. Janet went on to tell us that we would not be allowed to see our grandkids anymore unless we changed our will and included her kids as well. She said that she was going to have to take away our rights to see our grandkids if we didn't do as she said and made the necessary changes to include her family in the inheritance as well. She claimed that this is something that my son had told her to ask of us because he wanted everything to be fair and leaving her kids out of the inheritance would not be fair. My husband and I were obviously baffled when we heard that because none of it made any sense. Firstly, Janet's kids were not even a part of our family, so I couldn't see any reason why they would be entitled to our money after we were gone. It would have been a different story if Janet or her children had made any effort to get close to us or whatever, but that was not the case here, so there was no reason for us to leave anything to them. They had their own grandparents, and they could expect them to leave them something, but expecting us to do the same was just absurd. And more importantly, I could hardly believe that my son would say something like this and, moreover, get Janet to talk to us about it. He was quite well aware of our strained relationship with Janet, and he had enough sense to not make her talk to us about something like this, something which is so sensitive and personal. Also, our son is quite straightforward and honest with us, so we couldn't believe that he would get Janet to discuss this with us. I didn't buy that he had even told her to do anything of the sort, but on the off chance that maybe she wasn't lying, I decided not to say anything to her or accuse her of anything at the moment and just agreed with whatever she was saying. My husband and I were equally confused, but he got the hint and played along with me. I just told her that we would think about it and let her know in a couple of days. She had obviously been expecting an answer then and there because apparently our right to see our grandkids was at stake, and she expected us to get serious, but it was really difficult to do so when she had made it very obvious that there was something fishy going on. We had guessed in a couple of minutes that she was trying to do something here, and we were not falling for any of it. So just to pacify her, we agreed with everything that she said and then went back home. As soon as we were at home, my husband and I decided to call our son and talk to him about what just happened, because we were really confused and would appreciate some clarity on this. As soon as I had told him whatever Janet had told us, he sounded really alarmed and asked us if we had signed any documents or whatever, and we told him that no, we hadn't. Then he told us that he had said nothing of the sort and he had been afraid that Janet would try to do something like this because after that conversation that we had on the phone the other day that Janet had overheard, she had been hounding him to talk to us about the will. She had asked him that day itself if her kids were going to be included, and he had told her that they were not, which turned out to be a mistake because from that point forward, she started constantly nagging him to talk to us about it and fix it because she felt for whatever reason that her children were also entitled to be part of the inheritance. My husband and I are quite well off, and we have a considerable amount of money and assets that we are hoping to leave behind for our son and his children. But like I said, I don't think there's any reason that Janet should expect anything for herself or her children, and the audacity to even expect that our son would talk to us about it and turn the tide in her favor was quite frankly really absurd. On top of that, the fact that she had even attempted to go behind our son's back and talk to us about it and threaten us by saying that she would not allow us to see our grandkids again was simply ridiculous. I don't know why she expected that she could get away with it because we were obviously going to confront our son about it and get to the bottom of this because this was a pretty big deal and there was no way that she could avoid being caught. More importantly, she had inadvertently tried to ruin our relationship with our son by lying about him and going behind his back, and that was simply not fine with us. After that phone call with our son, he told us that he was going to tell our grandkids to directly come back to our place without going back home after they were done hanging out with friends and stuff, and he said that we were supposed to let them stay with us until he had sorted all this out. We were fine with that. So since that day, our grandkids have been living with us, and our son is still trying to sort things out with Janet, which is not proving to be easy because she is stubborn about the fact that her kids are also entitled to the family inheritance. I still don't understand why she feels that way, but there's not much that I can do to help right now apart from just taking care of my grandkids and keeping them out of trouble. And from what I have heard so far, things at my son's house are not really going well because Janet is not being receptive to any of his attempts to talk to her. From what he has told me so far, Janet has set an ultimatum for him and told him that he can either choose between keeping in touch with us or choosing her and his family, or he can take the third way out and somehow convince us to include her kids in the inheritance. What's interesting is that she herself said that she didn't want our son to talk to us anymore because we had insulted her by excluding her kids and treated her like an outsider in the family, but she's ready to take our money from us after we are gone. I guess her pride won't be taking a hit at that point. It's just all messy, and I just don't understand what to do about this. My husband and I really feel responsible because my son's marriage is in shambles right now, and even the grandkids don't seem happy about any of this. It's because my son is quite depressed. Every time he has come to visit us since the fight, he has been more and more upset, and we feel really bad for him. My husband and I are beginning to feel like we might be the ones who are at fault for this because we are the ones who did not include Janet's kids without thinking about her feelings. Maybe she is actually hurt and not just being greedy. I don't know, but things have gone too far, and my husband and I feel very bad about how things have turned out, especially me since I feel like this is kind of my responsibility for not including my son's wife's kids from her first marriage in our will. Update 1. Hello, everybody. It has been great reading all the comments, and I feel a lot better and relieved now, knowing that this was not my fault and Janet should have known better. It's been about 2 weeks since I made my original post here, and unfortunately, things have not improved between Janet and my son. She is still putting up a fight against him and forcing him to either choose between us or convince us somehow to include her kids in the will. I think she is being extremely unfair, and I desperately want to talk to her and give her a piece of my mind, but my son has forbidden me from speaking to her, and I think it's for the better because if I do talk to her, I am pretty sure that I will end up ruining their marriage forever because right now, I do not have the highest opinion of Janet. On the contrary, I might even have the lowest because what she is trying to do is disgusting. I just feel bad for my son because I know that he deserves better than this. Now, I might sound like a stereotypical evil mother-in-law, but I know what I'm talking about in this case. I don't think that I am the bad guy. I know that my son can do better, and the only reason he is still with Janet and has not left her yet is because he genuinely loves her. I appreciate that about him, that at least he is loyal to the people that he loves and is giving her a second chance to fix their marriage, but unfortunately, Janet is an idiot and is completely blowing it. She has the chance to make this work, but instead of trying to be a better person for my son, she's just sticking to whatever she says and making things even worse. I personally don't think that there is any way out of this for them apart from getting a divorce, but I'm not going to suggest it. My son has to come to that conclusion on his own. Update 2. Hello, so after the last update, a lot of people have accused me of being a nightmare of a mother-in-law. To these people, I just want to ask, why? I mean, after the things that I said, I had kind of been expecting it because even if you think your son should get a divorce, you should never really say it because then you immediately get branded as a bad mother-in-law who is obsessed with her son. But in my case, I really don't think that's the truth. I had given Janet and her children a chance to bond with us and build a relationship with us. And maybe if they had tried to be nice to us, they would not be in this situation at all today. But they didn't try to get along with us in the slightest, and Janet went out of her way to avoid us. So why on earth would I be interested in building a relationship with a woman like this? I gave her a chance, but she didn't take it. If anything, that makes her a bad daughter-in-law, and not only is she bad at that, but she's also a terrible wife because she went behind her husband's back and tried to jeopardize his relationship with his parents. If that doesn't ring any warning bells for you guys, I don't even know what to say. All I'm saying is I don't think it's fair to call me names and accuse me of trying to ruin my son's relationship with his wife. I didn't try and do anything. I think Janet is doing everything really well on her own. She has zero concern for his feelings and only cares about getting her kids to be part of the inheritance when we pass on. And I think that's pretty insulting itself as well because my husband and I, with God's grace, are pretty healthy right now, and even so, she seems obsessed with getting our wills changed according to her demands. Anyway, my point is that my son can do better, and I am not going to feel sorry for saying it because my husband and I have raised our son with a lot of love and care, and it really hurts us to see him get treated this way and constantly feel like crap about it. In the last few weeks, I can't even remember a single time that he came over to visit us and the kids, and he was actually happy. He has been really down in the dumps ever since the fight, but he is still trying to make it work. There is no way I'm the bad guy for saying that he deserves better because he really does. Things are still not going well between them, and the last time that our son came over to visit 3 days ago, he finally said that he might start thinking about getting a divorce because he is finding it impossible to continue living with Janet. She is making it impossible for him. I would say his kids are still living with us and have been going to school from our house, so the commute is a bit longer than usual, but they are okay with it because they know what their father is going through. We are trying our best to keep everyone happy, but it's becoming really difficult because if our son isn't happy, there's very little we can do to make his kids happy, and we are very close-knit as a family. If something is affecting one of us, it's eventually going to affect all of us, and that's what's happening right now. None of us are finding it easy to be happy or put on a brave face right now because we know that there is a chance that this might end up becoming really ugly in the event of a divorce, but we are trying our best to be brave and strong for our son, including his kids. We know that we are the source of each other's strength, and right now he needs us so we can't fall weak. But at least he is not going out of his way anymore for Janet and is facing the facts. He told us that Janet has been refusing to even talk to him for the last couple of days, saying that she's not going to say a word to him unless he decides to cut us off or he convinces us to include her children and consider them for the inheritance as well. The latter is obviously not going to happen, and even my son knows it, at least not at this point. Earlier, I might have even considered it, but what she has done is just not okay. We are trying our best to be supportive, but honestly, my husband and I just want our son to file for a divorce already. He doesn't need to put up with all of this because even though he loves Janet, she has made it very clear that she has different priorities. So the fact that he has said the words that he wants to file for divorce and has been thinking about it is a big deal for us because it means that he is finally coming to terms with the fact that this marriage is going to end. Hopefully, this is going to end well because so far, we know that Janet is capable of being extremely selfish, and we just hope that she doesn't try to screw our son over. Update 3. Hello, guys. It's been almost 3 weeks since my son first started fighting with Janet, and a couple of days ago, he finally came to us and told us that he was filing for divorce, and he had already spoken to his lawyer about it. He had filed for divorce a couple of days ago, and Janet was served today. Our son moved in with us and the kids, and we have all been living together in our house ever since he filed for divorce because the house that he and Janet used to live in is a joint asset, and he doesn't want to stay there, at least not until it is legally his. Honestly, my husband and I are really happy about it because it means that all of us are together under the same roof, and as long as we are together, we can get through this. Our son also seems a lot happier now that he is living with us, and we actually think that this might be a huge improvement for him. At least he won't be spiraling into a depression because we will be here to help him out. Janet was awfully furious that our son had even dared to imagine getting divorced and has been calling him nonstop trying to get to him, but he has muted all her notifications because he just doesn't want to talk to her, which I think is a good thing. He knows that he is in a very vulnerable state right now, and if Janet tries to manipulate him, it will be very easy for her because he still has feelings for her, and she's definitely going to try and take advantage of it, so it's better to just stay out of her way and let her try to talk to him without any response. Eventually, she's just going to give up, and we know that this is over anyway. She's just trying to revive it because she never thought that he would leave her over this. I guess she was a little too overconfident and hadn't actually thought anything through. I'm pretty sure that she is used to getting her way, but I'm glad that my son has a spine and stood up for himself. Now, whatever happens, I know that my son is strong enough to get through all of this, and we are going to make it easier for him by being there for him to the best of our capacity. All we wanted for him was to be happy, and now we are going to make sure that it happens. He has gone through enough, and Janet has put him through enough. No more. Right now, it's just us and our grandkids, and it's going to be a little difficult to get through the divorce, but I'm hopeful for the future, and I don't know, I just feel optimistic about everything right now. Now on to the next story. Story 5. I fell for my ex-wife's sister after my ex-wife abandoned our kids for a guy. While we secretly longed for each other for years, until my son admitted he wished she was his mother. I'm finally at a point where I can't stand this anymore. I, 32M, am in love with my former sister-in-law, 27F, and have been for a very long time, maybe a couple of years at this point. I'm not sure if I should just drop it or attempt to make something with her. I met my ex-wife and her sister when I was 23 years old. The relationship developed very quickly, and by 26, I had my son and daughter and had gotten married. However, within months of being married, my ex-wife had an affair. Worse than that, the man she cheated with had gotten her into heroin. After confronting her on this, she said she was going to get help, but instead, she left in the night. I haven't heard from her in 4 years, and the last I've heard, she's still with that guy and they're homeless in Las Vegas. I'm not sure how true that is, but being focused on holding it together for the kids, I really don't have the time to chase her down, nor do I want to after what she pulled. I ended up getting a divorce in absentia. I did, however, maintain a very positive relationship with my in-laws after the fact. Every other weekend, my kids stay over with their grandparents on that side, and they pretty much treat me like a son still. I still go to parties and Christmas with them, and I'm reasonably liked by the family. Nobody talks about my ex anymore, mainly to not worry my kids. My oldest, my son, is very hurt by his mother leaving. He's 9 now, and I've had to get therapy for him after he told me he hoped his mother was dead. She had been getting verbally abusive toward the end, which was when he was around 5 or 6. Anyhow, in the year following my ex leaving, her sister and her boyfriend had started coming around a lot to see the kids. They knew I worked a lot and would babysit and call it practice, as they wanted to have children of their own. My kids loved them and were spoiled by them, which I didn't mind because we all needed a little positivity. They got married and were very in love. However, her husband was killed in a workplace accident shortly after the birth of their daughter. It has been extremely rough and painful for everyone involved, as one can imagine. I followed my sister-in-law's example and began to take her and her daughter to give her time to herself if things got too hard to deal with or she needed alone time. She's been in grief counseling for a few years, but she still wears her ring and has told me she can't ever imagine dating again. I talk to her about him frequently, and she's gotten to a better place, but she's still very much in love with him. I can't imagine that sort of pain. Over the last 2 years, we've been a more constant figure in each other's lives. My kids love their aunt, and I have her over for dinner a couple of times a week. My daughter and her daughter have become close and love being around each other, so they have sleepovers. I've moved on from my ex, but the idea of dating possibly someone as dangerous as their mother has kept me out of the dating scene. I don't know when it happened, but slowly, I began to get soft on my sister-in-law. She's a great mom for what she has had happen to her. She's one of the sweetest people I know, and her sense of humor always leaves me laughing and happy. Then I started realizing that I'm physically attracted to her. I've always felt a bit guilty about it because her late husband was a good friend, and since she is obviously still grieving, I've kept it to myself. Since COVID started, we've been together a bit more because social distancing has had us lose contact with most other people. Nothing romantic has ever been discussed, and I try not to flirt, but last week it was very late, and after the kids went to bed, I made us a few drinks. Not enough to get drunk, but she decided she'd rather spend the night, so I took my couch. I woke up to breakfast this morning, and the 4 of us felt like the sort of family I've always wanted. She even kissed my forehead, which is not something she normally does. I still didn't say anything, but after she left, I found my son quietly playing with his toys in his room. He looked upset, so I asked him if he was all right. He tells me point blank, in the way only a kid can, that he wishes she was his mother. I sat down with him and asked him why he thought that way, and he gave a whole bunch of reasons. For being nice to him, that she never yells about anything, he likes seeing her at his grandparents', and she draws pictures with him, which I didn't know they did. By the end of it, my heart that is already melting for this woman, even more wound up when visiting and dropping them off with their grandparents. I tried to breach the subject with her folks to kind of feel around how people would see. I made a joke about she and I acting like a married couple sometimes, and they didn't laugh and were kind of standoffish, friendly, but either they know something or they disapprove. It's getting too hard for me to ignore or pretend it's not getting to me. I'm in love with her. Either I've got to stop it and find some way not to think of her, or I have to find some sort of way to navigate through this situation and tell her everything. If anybody out there has any insight on how to approach a widow, especially one who was married to a friend, with this sort of intention, I could really use your help. Update 1. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone who gave me advice on how to proceed and ideas and things I could maybe say to my former sister-in-law. What I ended up doing shortly after making the first post. I remembered that my children were spending Sunday night at their grandparents' house, and typically, when they do this, my niece, Sylvia's daughter, will join them. I allow these bi-weekly visits because I think it's important for them to maintain a healthy relationship with their mother's parents, and Sylvia lets her daughter go because she enjoys playing with my daughter. Well, I realized we'd both have a free night. Normally, I just game or hit the gym an extra night, but I figured it would be the perfect opportunity to see Sylvia without the kids being around. So I sent her a text saying, "Hey, kids are out this Sunday. Was thinking you might want to get dinner?" It was a fairly upscale place that reopened 2 months or so ago for outdoor dining. I never asked her out to dinner, and we're almost never alone together or without a child in the other room. She says she'd love to, and so my panic starts setting in because now I've got to actually act on my feelings. I asked her if she'd prefer meeting at my place and taking one car or meeting at the restaurant. She says she'll come by my place first. I'm a bit more cleaned up than normal, dressed up, but not overly dressed. She shows up and, my God, she's in a very nice evening dress. Makeup, not something she normally wears. Really looking stunning. I must have been slack-jawed for a second. I had to be. We make a little small talk, compliment how we look, but I still don't have my nerve yet and she isn't pushing the issue. Dinner is really wonderful. They had a live jazz-type group playing. Definitely coming back to this place, she tells me. This is the first time she's really had an adult social outing that didn't involve her daughter in a few years, and I mention that it's about as long for me. We're laughing, joking, talking, a little casual touching here and there. I can't seem to find my nerve though. I'm afraid of ruining this moment, so I just submit to having fun. But as we're leaving, my mind snaps and I'm just like, fuck it. And when we stand to go back to the car, I give her my arm, and we walk back to the car arm in arm. No awkwardness, nobody mentioning that it's happening. I open her door for her and I plan on driving her back to her car. As I open the door, she stops me, looking sort of nervous. She just outright tells me to stop and that she wants to kiss me. There was no alcohol at dinner, so this is all her. So I pull her in. We kiss. I can barely describe how wonderful it felt to finally touch her. The kissing goes on outside this restaurant with her leaned against my car for at least a half hour. When we finally break, we share a few more dreamy looks before we get in the car and drive back to my place. She's holding my hand as I'm driving. I don't think I've ever been happier. I confess to her that I've started having feelings for her a long time ago, but with the terrible things we went through, I didn't want to scare her away. She tells me that she's carried a torch for about 6 months herself. At that time, I had gone on a couple of Tinder dates, and since we were just friends, I described what a mess of a time those dates were. She tells me she began feeling intensely jealous and angry that I was seeing these girls. It was about that time it clicked in her mind that she had somehow developed feelings for me. As it turns out, I didn't approach her because of her late husband, and she wasn't approaching me because she was afraid I'd see too much of her sister, my ex-wife, in her and start to resent her for it. I invited her in after we got back home, and we decided to try and fight off the desire to jump straight into bed and just sat on the couch snuggling and talking about what we would need to do to make this a working relationship. There were some really teary moments there. We, of course, talked about her late husband a little and where she feels in the grief process. I said, I don't want to rush her and that I'm not going anywhere. If she needs time, I'll wait as long as she needs me to. She says that she feels like she's in a place where she could love again, that she's long past feeling guilty for having feelings for me. It was something she struggled with. She then brought up her sister and the obvious questions a few people asked in the comments. What would we do if my ex ever decided to show her face around here again or try to get back into my kid's life? What if she comes back, reformed and apologetic, would I take her back? I told Sylvia that's a hard no, that I've forgiven her for cheating on me, but I will never forgive her for what she did to my son. He was quite a sunshiny and happy boy before his mother started cheating, using, and lashing out at him. He's doing better now, but for a long while, his behavior and negativity for somebody so young troubled me. Sylvia was concerned how he might react to her, as unlike our respective daughters, he is old enough to understand everything. I told her not to tell him as it might embarrass him, but not too long ago, he told me he wished his aunt was his mom instead. We said we were going to take it slow and not go too fast with things, but the kissing started again, and since we were in private at this time, we gave up the fight to stay out of the bedroom. I have had fantasies throughout the duration of my feelings for her, and getting to pet her face in the morning was one I finally got to live out. Moving forward, we are going to establish date nights and work on building on our already strong foundation. When we inevitably tell our folks we're a couple, we're going to do it together. But that's where I'm at. That's it, that's my update. If the subreddit allows, maybe I'll do another to say how the parents, in-laws, and kids take the news. 2 years of wishing she was mine, and now she is. Better not mess this up. Update 2. Edit. I forgot to add that I am referring to my ex-wife as Jessica and my sister-in-law, who I had been calling Sylvia, as Sylvia because it's funny. Well, we've told everyone, and for the most part it's gone over fairly well. When our respective kids were with my in-laws, Sylvia and I went to go see my parents. They've met her a handful of times, but they don't really know her too well as my in-laws and my family rarely attended mutual functions. They at least recognized who she was. My dad isn't a particularly sentimental person, so I have no idea what he thinks about it, but my mother is on board. She did ask if Jess knew, and we told her that I haven't even spoken with her in 4 years and Sylvia hasn't heard from her in 2, that we'd cross that bridge when we got to it. Other than that, my folks just seemed happy for me. Yesterday, we attended a small family gathering for Labor Day at my in-laws. We knew the reception here would be a little more chilly as they're all also related to my ex-wife. My parents did us the favor of taking the kids to the zoo for the afternoon and ice cream, too. We arrived at the party together, and of course, everybody is wondering where the kids are. I felt like a million things were telling me not to do this, but I took her by the hand, and we both explained the kids were not here because we intended on telling everyone that we are now a couple. This wasn't a huge crowd, maybe like 8 people, but it really felt like I announced it to a stadium. I don't know how we expected it to go, but several of her aunts were very pleased with this. We got some hugs. At first, nobody even mentioned my ex-wife. They were just happy because they had all settled on Sylvia just never dating again. It was only my mother-in-law that caused any issues. She told the party that she knew we were an item because I was always giving her puppy dog eyes, and told them Sylvia talked about me nonstop. She asked for how long we had been dating in secret, and I told her only a week. She scoffed and told me that she didn't think starting a relationship off by lying would be a smart move. She then accused, albeit it in a joking manner to the guests, that Sylvia and I had vanished at a pool party in June to smooch. Her mother and father asked to talk with us after the party and asked us just how serious things were, and like my parents, asked whether my ex-wife knew or not. When I said no and that her opinion shouldn't matter given she abandoned her family 4 years ago, they said they would be more comfortable with everything if I was to tell Jessica that I am now dating her sister. They are both intensely afraid that my ex will return, sober and renewed, make an attempt to make amends, discover that I am now in love with her younger sister, and relapse. It sounded to me as if they knew something I didn't, and as it turns out, Jess has been calling and talking to them for a year now and they just haven't told me. I was upset they kept this from me. Sylvia was very upset, too, because not once after her husband's death has Jess ever tried to call her. They show me her Facebook profile, the one she blocked me from, and there she is, looking pretty normal, not like a burned-out husk. I have to admit that seeing her not looking like the junkie she became when she left made me feel a little better, and Sylvia too. Her parents kept their contact with her a secret because she is ashamed of what she's done and feels that she's deserved to lose her kids and couldn't face them after all that happened. Sylvia's parents gave me her phone number and asked that I please call her and speak with her. I told her that my feelings for Sylvia are real and there is no chance I reconcile with Jess. Her father seemed to nod in approval, but her mother honestly looks like she was hoping we'd fix things. After we left, I talked to Sylvia about it, and though we discussed a circumstance where Jess returns before, we decided to revisit the conversation in light of these new revelations. I told Sylvia that I am in love with her. My whole heart is hers, and my feelings of love for her are something deeper and stronger than anything I ever felt for my ex-wife. She ends up crying from the stress of the situation, anger with her parents for keeping secrets, and anger with her sister for not calling her or offering condolences at all after her husband's death. She then admits that she is afraid I might leave her if her sister returns, and I assure her this will never happen. It took some long hugs and a lot of kisses to smooth over the situation, but by the time we went to pick up the kids, we were holding hands together again and feeling more connected than ever. She's been spending the night at my place pretty frequently since we've been together, so the kids don't see anything. I've been setting my alarm for 5 in the morning, getting up, and moving to the couch. Well, the morning after, we decided to tell the little ones what is going on. Our daughters seemed very happy, but they are too young to really grasp what's actually taking place. All they know is they can play together more. I did take my son aside, just me and him, and asked him if he was okay with this and what he thought about it. He asked if we'd all be living together. I told him maybe someday. He asked if this made his aunt his stepmom now, and I said he's free to call her what he's comfortable with and I will respect it. and she would too because we both love him. He then asked me a lot of questions about his own mother, things he had never asked me before, and I answered pretty much everything he wanted to know. I toned some of my answers down a bit. He's learned a little about the dangers of drugs from school programs, and I was finally honest to that degree when I told him his mom had a problem and she made some bad choices. He asked me why his mother didn't love him, and that broke my heart. I assured him the best I could that his mother did love him. She had just made a lot of terrible mistakes and that sometimes adults just don't do the right thing when they should. He asked me if I still loved her. I told him that I hoped she would get better and that I don't want her to be sick anymore, but that she hurt me and him so badly that I couldn't love her like I did before. Not sure he got all of that, but I tried explaining it to him the best I could. All that aside, he has been so much happier and less withdrawn since Sylvia has been with us. And he's always going out of his way to do all the typical kid stuff to impress her that I did with my own mom. At the end of the day, I still have that phone call with the ex to dread, but having Sylvia with me, being able to kiss her and hold her at night, it really put some joy back into me that's been gone for a very long time. I don't think I even knew how unhappy I'd been all these years until I realized how happy she made me feel. We've been doing all the happy young lover stuff. She's been leaving me love letters in my work lunchbox, even little poems, and I had flowers sent to her place of work. She mentioned she had told me that a few of the ladies at work had been trying to get her to ask me out for several months. So I figured the flowers would both make her happy and be a firm thank you wink to the office girls. Thank you for everyone who commented or sent me messages on the first and second posts. They really made my day and helped me keep my cool to confess to her. Feel free to ask me anything, but I think this just about does it for my updates. Update 3. People have been asking me for an update for a couple of months now, so I figured I'd finally sit down and do one. What you're about to read is a comment I wrote like last week, and I've just copied and pasted it as it's pretty much good enough to be a post. It details how the phone call with my ex-wife went and a little more info. I did talk to her back in September. I keep gonna write an update for this, but life got pretty hectic. I did write like a 10-paragraph update like a month ago, but my laptop crashed, I lost it, and got discouraged. The ex-wife is in a much better place and is in recovery, 8 months clean by this point. She finally told me the details of the affair and how things happened, how she got into drugs. Not stuff I really wanted to hear, but she's trying to get her life together, and as much as I dislike the things she's done to me and the kids, I want her to get healthy. I shouldn't, but I worry about her still sometimes. Anyhow, I got around to telling her about Sylvia and she was dumbfounded by it. When I first met my ex, she was 19 and Sylvia was 14, and in her mind, she always viewed her as a kid in regards to me, which to be fair, I did used to refer to Sylvia as her kid sister. But when she remembered that her sister is a fully grown adult who was married and had a child, her hinting I was a creep stopped. She did ask if I had feelings for her while I was married, and I denied that. We talked about the kids, and she was really regretful and crying throughout the conversation. She has no idea how she'd be able to face them again. I wanted to say something reassuring, but I don't want to give her the impression that I want her in their lives. I'll be cordial, even friendly, but I'm not going to be stupid. She and Sylvia talked for a while, too. I didn't eavesdrop intentionally, but from the bits I heard and what I was told, they talked about Sylvia's husband. As it turns out, my ex had gotten arrested for another week and spent it in jail. She didn't even know he passed until a couple of weeks after the funeral, and by that point, she felt saying anything would make things worse. Things went as well as could be expected. Sylvia, the 3 kids, and I have been spending almost every day together, and I haven't been happier in years. My son and daughter love all the motherly attention they've been getting, and I'm really loving getting to learn more about my little niece. Life's good. Busy, but it's good. Thanks for asking. I might just copy and paste this as my update, lol. Alright, that was my comment update, and nothing has really changed in the week since I wrote it. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer what I can when I can, but during this season, my workload increases dramatically and I don't have as much time to be on here as I did when I first posted. I'm so glad I got up the nerve to try with her. I love her so much. I've been so long without a romantic partner that I forgot what being in love or feeling loved felt like. Now that I remember, it's shocking to me. I didn't realize how alone and miserable I really was. I mean, for Christ's sake, we played Scrabble last night and for some reason it made me ridiculously happy, lol. Update 4. It has nearly been a year since my former sister-in-law, Sylvia, decided to begin dating. A year later, and we are living together and I couldn't be happier. We're currently living together and are in the market for a new home. Our children are really benefiting from having two parents around to care for them. Our daughters have begun to call each other sisters, and my son has accepted her in the same way. They're basically just normal siblings. It is interesting with my son. When he is talking to his friends or teacher, he refers to Sylvia as his mom, but when calling her or talking to her, he still calls her auntie, and our daughters are the same as I am uncle. It confuses some people we meet, but it's always an interesting story to tell. We haven't had much contact with my ex-wife since my last post, though from what we hear, she's doing much better, has a halfway decent job, a boyfriend, and is keeping clean. I don't like to think about her being reintroduced into my children's lives, but if she continues to be a clean and well-rounded person, it will make it much harder for me to deny her visitation should she seek it, not just from a legal standpoint but from a moral one as well. Neither Sylvia and I look forward to that day, but the worries seem way off. Her parents have stopped their prodding into our business and haven't tried to force the ex back into our lives as we feared. Our kids spend the weekend with them now as my two were already doing it beforehand, so Sylvia and I get to spend Friday night and most of Saturday to go on dates and have some alone time. Our mutual friends were all pretty surprised by this and have been very supportive as well. They try to be polite and not mention my ex-wife, but every so often it does come up. Mostly everyone is just happy that we found happiness together. One side of the family that I failed to mention in all of this was the family of her late husband. As you might expect, her daughter still sees them regularly, and they are very happy and accepting of the relationship. His father even told me point-blank that he was glad it was me because he thought he would hate his daughter-in-law bringing some strange man into his granddaughter's life. We haven't had many gatherings, of course, because of COVID, but the few get-togethers we have had have included them and will always include them. Speaking of her late husband, Sylvia and I have talked quite a bit about our feelings, and she's even had me come along to one of her therapy sessions because despite everything going so well and the immense and wonderful love we have for each other, his memory and presence will always be a part of our lives. She decided on her own that out of respect for me, she had to take her wedding band off, something that caused a lot of sadness, as you can imagine. I told her that she didn't need to do this and, were we to get married, she's got two hands. After I said this, she began to wear it on a necklace instead. She wears an engagement ring now. I don't have any crazy story on how the engagement went down. I didn't spring it on her in some crazy public spectacle, but there were tears and hugs and kisses. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank everyone so much for all the positive words of encouragement. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Sister banned me from her wedding because I'd bring bad luck, but her new husband found out and called off the wedding. Now they're separated, and she's blaming me. Hi everyone. My name is Olivia, 24F, and I have somehow become responsible for deciding how my sister Rebecca's, 29F, marriage will be. Before I get into the details, let me just say right off the bat, I'm the product of my dad's affair. Yeah, it's awkward, and I've been reminded of that constantly by my stepmom, Ashley, 53F. She said things like, I'm a constant reminder of my dad's mistakes, more times than I can count. Fun, right? So growing up was rough. Ashley always made sure I knew I was different. I remember one summer when I was like 8 or 9, Rebecca and I wanted to go to the pool with some friends. I asked Ashley if I could tag along, and she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Why don't you just stay home and give everyone a break?" Like, what did I even do? I was just a kid. Rebecca smirked. They left without me, and I cried all day. That was pretty much my entire childhood. Ashley had a way of making me feel like I didn't belong. On holidays, she'd get Rebecca these awesome, thoughtful gifts like designer clothes or gadgets, and I'd get, I don't know, a dollar store candle or something. One Christmas, Rebecca got a brand new laptop because she needed it for college, and I got a scarf. Yep, they didn't even get my initials right. Like, what the actual hell? Rebecca wasn't any better. She was older than me, so I always kind of looked up to her, but she used it against me. She'd constantly make fun of how I dressed or how I talked or literally anything she could think of. There was this one time in middle school, I had these purple sneakers that I loved. I thought they were the coolest thing ever. Rebecca saw them and said, "You know those make you look like a clown, right?" I tried to laugh it off, but after that, I couldn't even look at them without feeling embarrassed. Oh, and Rebecca liked to spread rumors about me at school, too. She told her friends I was adopted, which technically I guess you could say I was, and that rumor spread like wildfire. People started asking me if it was true, and I was just mortified. When I confronted her, she just shrugged and said, "Well, you kind of are, right? Like, seriously?" I tried to bond with her, too. I figured if I could be more like her, maybe she'd accept me. I'd ask if she wanted to watch movies together or help me with homework, but she always had some excuse. "I'm busy," or "Why don't you ask your real mom for help?" It got to the point where I just stopped trying. Eventually, I went off to college and distanced myself from all of them. It was a huge relief to be away, but the emotional damage was already done. Even now, when I go back for holidays, the tension is so thick. Ashley makes passive-aggressive comments about how I never visit, and Rebecca loves to throw in digs. Like, some people just can't handle family. The worst part of it all was when my dad had a health scare a couple of years ago. He was rushed to the hospital and we were all pretty shaken up. I showed up to be with him, and Ashley and Rebecca acted like I didn't exist. Ashley muttered something about how I shouldn't even be there, and Rebecca flat out told me to leave, saying, "Why don't you just go back? We've got this." Even in that serious moment, they couldn't let go of their pettiness. And what did my dad do? Nothing. He never stood up for me. Every time I'd tell him how I felt, he'd just say something like, "I know it's hard, but try to get along. Like, thanks for the support, Dad." It was like he didn't want to deal with it, and I was just supposed to suck it up. So yeah, like I said, I had moved out and was doing my own thing, living my life away from the chaos at home. I'd still go back for the holidays, but other than that, I barely talked to my family. It was just easier that way. But last year, Rebecca brought her fiancé, Roger, 29M, to one of these holiday get-togethers. I had no idea what to expect, honestly. I figured he'd be just like the rest of them, polite but distant, or maybe even awkward around me because, family drama. But to my surprise, Roger and I actually hit it off. He was normal. Like, he didn't treat me like I was this weird outsider or, worse, Dad's big mistake. We talked about random stuff. Movies, music, travel, which, given the whole Europe thing, was a sore topic, but I played it cool. It was just easy. It felt like, for once, someone in my family didn't see me as some kind of walking reminder of their messed up history. The visit itself was the same as always. Ashley was cold, giving me her classic, "Oh, so you finally decided to show up?" Like I owed her something. Rebecca was just Rebecca, kind of ignoring me but not being outright rude, probably because Roger was there. She might have been on her best behavior for him, who knows. Then, out of nowhere, Rebecca pulled me aside and asked if I'd be one of her bridesmaids. And I was like, wait, what? I mean, we barely talk, and now she wants me in her wedding? My first instinct was to say no. The thought of standing up there with her, pretending like we were one big happy family, made me want to run. But I didn't want to stir up more drama, so I said yes. Maybe she was trying to make peace, or maybe it was just for show. But whatever, I went along with it. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the start of us getting closer. But nope. It was like I agreed to be a bridesmaid in name only. She barely involved me in anything. There was this group chat with all the other bridesmaids, and I was in it, but I might as well not have been. They'd be chatting about dress fittings and bachelorette party plans, and I was just there. One time, I asked Rebecca if I should come along for dress shopping, and she was like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I've got it handled." Okay, cool. Thanks for the invite, sis. But soon, I realized that Rebecca asking me to be a bridesmaid wasn't really about making amends or anything. I realized pretty quickly it was just her way of making me feel like crap all over again. I thought maybe it would bring us closer, but instead, I got stuck doing all the boring tasks. I helped with the gifts, sent out the invites, and basically did all this stuff to help her out, and still, I didn't get invited to her bachelorette party. Like, seriously? But here's the kicker. After everything I did for her, Rebecca straight up told me I couldn't come to the wedding. Her reason? She actually said having someone like me, a product of an affair, would be bad luck for her marriage. Like, what the actual hell? I was so mad. I went off on her, yelling and even dropping a few curse words. Couldn't hold back. She deserved it, honestly. I mean, how could she say that to me? I've heard a lot of hurtful things from my family over the years, but that one stung on a whole other level. I just couldn't believe my own sister was kicking me out of her wedding because of something I had literally no control over. She acted like I was some bad omen or something, just because of how I was born. And the worst part? She didn't even seem fazed by my reaction. She just stood there, all calm and collected, like I was the one being dramatic. No apology, no nothing. So yeah, after that, I was done. I cut her off completely. It wasn't even about the wedding at that point. It was the fact that she saw me as some kind of stain on her perfect life and didn't give a damn about my feelings. I was tired of trying to fit into a family that didn't want me, and to be honest, I think cutting her off was the best decision I ever made. Dad didn't really get involved much. I think he felt guilty, but at the same time, he's always been the kind of guy to avoid conflict, especially with Ashley around. She probably loved the fact that I wasn't going to the wedding. It's like the less I was around, the better for her. Dad didn't stand up for me, but honestly, I didn't expect him to. He's never really done that, so why would he start now? However, the drama was far from over. So, it's her wedding day, and I'm just at home, minding my own business, literally chilling on the couch, when out of nowhere, I get this call from Rebecca. She's full-on screaming at me, telling me I've ruined her life. Like, what? I hadn't even talked to her that day, let alone done anything to ruin her wedding. I barely managed to ask what was going on before she launched into a string of swear words, said something about how I always have to make everything about myself, and then slammed the phone down on me. I was just sitting there like, what? Before I could even process what the hell just happened, my phone buzzes again. This time, it's a text from my cousin. He sent me a video and was like, you need to watch this right now. So, naturally, I clicked on it and oh boy, it was a video from the wedding reception. It was Roger's speech and the whole thing was about me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Apparently, during his big wedding toast, Roger decided to talk about how my family had treated me over the years. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He was basically calling out everyone for how they'd made me the scapegoat, how they'd never given me a fair chance, and how I didn't deserve to be treated like an outsider just because of things that were out of my control. I sat there, stunned, watching Roger drop bomb after bomb in front of the entire wedding. He went on about how I was always made to feel less than, how people in my family had constantly looked down on me, and how wrong it was. It wasn't some small side note either. It was the main focus of his whole speech. He even ended it by saying, Olivia, if you're watching this, I want you to know that not everyone in this family thinks you're a mistake. You deserve better. And I'm sorry you had to go through all this. I didn't know how to feel. I was blown away by how bold Roger was to say all that at their wedding. I mean, I appreciated what he said. He was sticking up for me in front of everyone. But I could also see why Rebecca had freaked out. Of course, she'd blame me even though I literally had nothing to do with it. She was probably embarrassed that her brand new husband just aired all the dirty laundry in front of their guests. And because it was about me, she turned her anger toward me as usual. The rest of the day, I kept getting texts and calls from family members. Half of them were angry, like, how could you let Roger ruin Rebecca's big day? As if I had any control over what came out of his mouth. The other half were actually supportive, saying stuff like, I didn't know things were that bad for you, or, I'm sorry I never stood up for you. It was such a mixed bag of emotions. I didn't even know how to respond to most of them, so I just ignored my phone for the rest of the day. The funny thing is, Roger and I hadn't even talked about my family in that much detail. Sure, we'd had a few conversations and he knew things were rough between me, Rebecca, and Ashley, but I never expected him to go out there and give a whole speech about it. Part of me felt guilty, like I had unintentionally ruined Rebecca's wedding, but at the same time, I couldn't help but feel relieved that someone had finally said it out loud and in front of all the people who had been treating me like crap for years. It was the validation I never expected but always kind of wanted. So, like I said, after all that craziness, I thought it was over. But nope. A few minutes later, my dad calls me, which is already weird because he hardly ever calls unless he absolutely has to. He starts the conversation in this awkward way, like he's trying to be casual, but I could tell something was up. After a few, "How are yous?" and "Hope you're doing wells," he finally gets to the point and asks if I'd be willing to talk to Roger and tell him he's wrong about everything, that things aren't as bad as he made them seem. I was shocked. Like, seriously? My own dad was asking me to lie, to downplay everything that had happened and pretend like the years of being treated like garbage didn't exist. Felt like a slap in the face. I mean, it's not like Roger was spouting lies at the wedding. He literally told the truth about how I've been treated. And instead of owning up to it, my dad was trying to cover it up. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I straight up told him no. I'm not doing that. I wasn't going to throw Roger under the bus for standing up for me, and I sure as hell wasn't going to act like my family hadn't treated me like crap for years. My dad's response? He said that Rebecca's marriage and the family's reputation were on the line, as if that was supposed to make me change my mind. I honestly couldn't believe that even after everything, his main concern was about what other people thought and not about how I'd been treated. I stood my ground and told him again, I'm not going to say anything to Roger. What he said was the truth, and I'm not going to lie to make anyone feel better. Dad didn't like that, of course, and he started going on about how this whole thing was blown out of proportion, and that if I just talked to Roger, everything would blow over. I could tell he was getting frustrated with me, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me into fixing a mess that they created. But here's the thing. Since that phone call, they haven't stopped. I keep getting texts and calls from my dad, Rebecca, and even some other family members, all of them pressuring me to smooth things over with Roger. It's like they think if I say something, everything will magically go back to normal, and they can pretend like nothing ever happened. Rebecca, in particular, has been relentless, sending me these long, dramatic messages about how I'm ruining her life and how her marriage is going to fail if I don't step in, as if that's somehow my fault now. I'm stuck in this weird spot because on the one hand, I don't want to see Roger and Rebecca's marriage fall apart because of this, but on the other hand, I'm not about to lie or let them sweep everything under the rug just for the sake of keeping up appearances. I didn't do anything wrong, and I'm not going to fix this mess for them. If Rebecca's marriage is on the rocks because of what Roger said, that's something they need to figure out between the two of them. It's not my responsibility to save them from the truth. At this point, I don't even know what to do. I've told them no multiple times, but they just won't let it go. I'm seriously considering blocking their numbers for a while just to get some peace, but I feel like that might make things even worse. I don't know. It's exhausting. I just want to move on with my life and not be dragged into their drama anymore. But they're making it really hard. If anyone has any advice on how to deal with this kind of situation, I'm all ears. Thank you in advance. Update 1. Hi everyone. So, I just wanted to clear a few things up because I've been getting a lot of questions and comments that need some explaining. First of all, a lot of you asked why I was even living with my stepmom and dad in the first place, and I honestly can't believe I have to clarify this. But the reason is because my mom died when I was only 4 years old. She was in a car accident and passed away on the way to the hospital. After that, I didn't have much choice but to move in with my dad and his wife, Ashley. It's not like I had anywhere else to go. I mean, I was just a kid, you know? And yes, my dad sucks. I don't think I've sugarcoated that, but let's just lay it all out there. This whole mess started because my dad couldn't keep it in his pants. My mom and he were office colleagues, and they had an affair behind Ashley's back for about a year before everything came crashing down. Ashley only found out the truth when one of her friends spotted my dad at a women's clinic with my mom, and, well, you can imagine how that went down. Despite all of that, Ashley decided to forgive him and stay with him. I've tried to put myself in her shoes, and I get it. It must have been incredibly painful for her. I can only imagine how hard it must have been to have me around, being a constant reminder of my dad's betrayal. But at the same time, I was just a little kid. I didn't deserve the way she treated me. None of this was my fault. Growing up in that house, I could tell from a young age that Ashley never saw me as part of the family. She tolerated me at best. She'd make these offhand comments like, "Your mother might have been prettier, but at least I'm the one who stuck around," or, "I wonder how different your life would be if she hadn't died." And while I didn't understand all of it at first, by the time I was a teenager, it was pretty clear she resented me for even existing. Every argument, every family event, I could feel her side eyeing me like I was a mistake that had wandered into her perfect little family. The second thing I want to address is Roger. A lot of you were curious about why he made that speech at the wedding, and honestly, it wasn't something he had planned from the start. The reason Roger gave that speech was because he found out after the wedding that Rebecca had told me not to come. He had no idea she'd uninvited me. I guess someone spilled the beans during the reception, and when he found out, he was pissed. He's always been a pretty chill guy, but I think it was the last straw for him. So, in the heat of the moment, he decided to call out my family during his wedding speech. I don't think he meant to cause a scene or anything. He just couldn't stand the idea that I was being treated so badly, especially when I'd done nothing to deserve it. Some of you also asked why I even agreed to be a bridesmaid in the first place, knowing how things were between me and Rebecca, and honestly, I was just shocked she asked me. For a moment, I thought maybe this was her way of extending an olive branch, like maybe we could finally move past all the bad blood. Looking back, that was probably naive of me, but at the time, I just wanted to believe that things could get better. So when she asked, I said yes, even though I had a gut feeling that it might end badly. And, of course, she ended up using me as her personal errand girl, then uninviting me when she didn't need me anymore. I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. The thing that really hurt wasn't just the fact that she uninvited me. It was the reason she gave me. Rebecca straight up told me that having someone like me, the product of an affair, at her wedding would bring her bad luck. I don't think I've ever felt more like an outsider than I did in that moment. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about the years of being treated like I didn't belong, and that comment was the final nail in the coffin. So when Roger found out what she'd done, I guess he felt like he needed to say something. I mean, I never asked him to defend me like that, but at the same time, it felt good to have someone finally acknowledge what I've been going through. Of course, it caused a ton of drama, and now I'm being blamed for ruining Rebecca's wedding, even though I wasn't even there. Update 2. Hi everyone. I've got some updates for you all, and things have gotten even more complicated because of course they have, right? So yesterday, about 3 days after the wedding, I got a call from Roger. I was a little surprised because I hadn't expected to hear from him so soon, but I was also curious, so I picked up. He asked if I could meet up with him to talk, and I agreed. We decided to meet at this little cafe near my house, the kind of place where you can sit outside and sip your coffee while pretending your life isn't a total dumpster fire. When I got there, Roger looked, I don't know, kind of worn out. He seemed a little stressed, which, to be fair, I get. We'd both been through the emotional ringer. Anyway, we started with some small talk before he finally got to the point and apologized to me for everything that had happened, specifically for his speech at the wedding. I didn't even know what to say at first because, honestly, I didn't think he had anything to apologize for. If anything, I felt like he was the only person who had my back during all this chaos. But I guess he felt bad about how things blew up. I asked him why he didn't just talk to Rebecca directly instead of calling me out of the blue, and he said he did talk to her right after he found out she had uninvited me, but she basically dismissed his concerns. He said he had always known Rebecca could be a little mean, but he never thought she would treat her own family like this. That kind of hit me in the gut because, to be honest, I didn't think it was that big of a secret that Rebecca was a nightmare to me. I figured if he was marrying her, he had to have seen how she treated me. But I guess she kept that side of herself hidden from him or at least downplayed it. So then I asked him, what are you planning to do now? Like, what's his next move? Because I was genuinely curious how this was going to affect their marriage. And you know what he said? He doesn't know. He looked so confused and conflicted, like he hadn't really thought it through yet. He said part of him was struggling with the idea of being married to someone who could treat their own sister like this, but at the same time he wasn't sure what to do because it was, marriage and this just happened. So I'm guessing he's still processing everything. Then he asked me if I was planning to forgive Rebecca. That question totally caught me off guard because, to be honest, I hadn't even thought about forgiving her yet. I've just been trying to process my own emotions. So I told him Rebecca hasn't even called me, other than that one time when she cussed me out over the phone after the wedding. Roger looked genuinely shocked, like he couldn't believe she hadn't reached out to make things right. He then told me that he had specifically told Rebecca her marriage was contingent on her apologizing to me and making things right. Apparently, he had made it very clear that he couldn't move forward with her if she didn't at least try to fix this mess. So for him to find out she hadn't even tried to reach out to me was like a slap in the face. I could see he was really disappointed in her, and honestly, I didn't know what to say to that. Like, what was I supposed to do at this point? It felt like Rebecca had chosen her pride over her relationship, not just with me, but with her husband, too. We talked for a little while longer, but the whole vibe was just heavy, you know? He eventually got up to leave, but before he did, he told me he was going to have another talk with Rebecca and figure out where things stood. Part of me felt bad for him because it was clear he didn't sign up for this kind of drama when he married her. But at the same time, I couldn't help but think this is the reality of being with Rebecca. This is who she is. I'm just trying to keep my head above water at this point. Update 3. Well, here's the final update for you all. It's been about a month since my last post, and a lot has happened since then. I wasn't sure if I'd be back with more updates, but here we are. First off, I still haven't received any kind of apology from Rebecca. Shocker, right? On the upside, the constant badgering from my parents has finally stopped. I don't know if they just got tired of me refusing to play along or if they realized I wasn't going to change my stance, but either way, I'm grateful. It's been really nice to have that space to breathe without them trying to guilt-trip me into fixing things with Rebecca. I feel like I finally got a little peace, at least from that side of things. But here's the big news. Rebecca and Roger are officially separated. I know, wild, right? I didn't expect it to happen so soon, but from what I've learned through Roger and a few of my cousins, it sounds like things have been rocky between them for a while, and this whole wedding drama was just the final nail in the coffin. I won't lie, part of me feels guilty, like I was somehow the catalyst for their split, but Roger's been really kind about it all. He's assured me that this wasn't entirely about the wedding or me. I'll be honest, I was relieved when he told me that. It made me feel a little less like I was the reason their marriage fell apart. Roger said it was more about who Rebecca was as a person than anything I did or didn't do, and that took a weight off my shoulders. I didn't want to be responsible for someone else's relationship issues, especially when I've been trying to distance myself from family drama for years. Apparently, Rebecca wasn't taking the separation well, but that's kind of to be expected, right? I mean, she's not exactly someone who handles things gracefully. From what I've heard, she's been blaming everyone but herself. Classic Rebecca. Some cousins have even told me she's been spinning this story that I somehow manipulated Roger or convinced him to leave her, which is insane, but it's not surprising given how she's always tried to paint me as the villain in every situation. And as for Roger, he and I have stayed in touch. It's not like we're super close or anything, but we've checked in on each other a few times since the separation. He seems to be doing okay, all things considered. I think he's still processing everything, but he told me he's been talking to a therapist, which I think is a really good step for him. Honestly, I hope he finds his peace too, because he deserves better than what he went through with Rebecca. If anything new happens, I'll keep you guys updated, but for now, I think this might be the end of the road for this particular saga. Thanks for sticking with me through all of this. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My sister moved in with us and kept waking up my baby at 4 a.m. When I set a curfew, she called me a beach, and then she stole my expensive diaper bag for her beach trip. I, 25F, live in a 3-bedroom apartment with my fiancé, 27M. We have a 6-month-old son. My younger sister, Mia, fake name, 20F, recently started attending a university that's closer to where I live than both my parents' places. Because she needs to get to class early in the morning, my fiancé and I allowed her to move into our spare bedroom. She's been living with us since January. There's a set of rules I've been having Mia follow since she moved in, mostly to make sure everyone can live peacefully. One of the most important rules concerns arriving after my son's bedtime, usually between 1900 hours and 2000 hours. Mia is allowed to come home however late she wants as long as she doesn't make too much noise. The door to the apartment has an electronic keypad lock, and the one we use also has a normal lock under it. Everyone has a copy of the key, but we all prefer typing in the password. However, the keypad is very noisy, and my son's nursery isn't far from the door. Every time the keypad is used after I've put the baby to sleep, he wakes up. So, Naturally, the rule about getting home late includes not using the keypad. Everyone, including Mia, has known about this since day one. At first, we had no problems, but now that Mia has gotten used to college life, she's been going out at night frequently. This past month, she has arrived home after midnight every Friday and Saturday night. She always forgets the don't make too much noise rule, and she has on multiple occasions used the keypad. My son wakes up crying every damn time. I'd sit her down and remind her of the rule whenever this happened, but she'd continue to do it. My fiancé and I got tired of putting our baby back to sleep because of that, so I changed the password and told Mia she was no longer allowed to use the keypad. She agreed and promised to try to make less noise. On Friday night this week, Mia went out with her friends. She came home very drunk at 4 a.m. and forgot that I'd changed the password. Not only did she use the keypad, she also got the password wrong so many times that she triggered an alarm. I was furious. Not only did my baby wake up crying, but I also got complaints from my neighbors. The next morning, I told Mia that I'm establishing a curfew while living with me. She needs to be home by 2000 hours. She won't be allowed to go out at night for the rest of the semester. Mia put up a fight, saying I have no right to ground her. Edit. I never used that word like this, or dictate what she does with her free time, but I held my ground. I told her she'll be free to do as she pleases when she has her own place and raises her own family. While living with mine, she has to do as I say. She told our parents about this. Our mother and stepfather are both on my side. Our father is on Mia's. He's saying I'm not her mother and I have no right to treat her like a child. He also thinks it's unfair to do this to her over a drunken mistake. Some comments where OP has replied, OP clarifies she is living here for free, but only for now. The deal is for her to start paying a small portion of rent once she gets a job. Comment 1. What if she never gets a job or takes months? What if she gets a job but doesn't tell you because she prefers freeloading? OP. If the latter happens, I will find out. She tells our mother everything and my mom would tell me. I know my family, but honestly, I don't need her to pay me right now. My father still gives her some money for personal expenses, so I'm not spending too much on her. Comment 2. I'm having genuine trouble. How is unlocking multiple locks and jangling keys into a door quieter than a keypad, excluding the alarm, and also wouldn't wake the baby up? OP. It's only one lock. It's not noiseless, but it's quiet enough that it doesn't wake the baby. The keypad makes very loud noises every time something is typed in, as well as another one once the door is open. Comment 3. How loud it is? OP. Very. It makes noises whenever something is typed in as well as another one once the door has been unlocked. And she's not just quietly typing in the password. She's being loud besides that. Slamming the door, knocking stuff over, etc. Comment 4. I believe some electronic locks have a silent function. At least my alarm system's keypad does. Although I'm not so sure. I don't have electronic door locks, which is why I asked the question in the first place. OP. The one we use doesn't have a silent function. Update 1. May 10, 2024. It's very hard to explain my relationship with my younger sister in proper detail, but I will say that while I love her dearly, Mia has always been a very inconsiderate person. I have countless examples. She almost didn't attend our cousin's wedding last year because she didn't want to walk to the venue, which was 2 blocks away from our mom's place. We shared a bathroom when we were younger, and she'd insist on having the top drawers because she didn't want to crouch down, but she was cool with me doing so. She slept through my college graduation and didn't apologize for it. I'm bringing this up now because whenever I asked Mia why she kept forgetting to use her key, her excuse was that looking through her bag took too long and the keypad was quicker. In her head, bothering other people is better than slightly inconveniencing herself. After I established the curfew, Mia tried different ways to make me change my mind. She'd talk about not being able to cancel her tickets for Party X or about the fun her friends had at Party Y. She'd show me her developing LinkedIn profile and tell me she had learned her lesson and would be more responsible. At first, I really didn't want to have to kick her out, which many of you suggested, but I have limits. A few days ago, I heard her complaining to her friends on the phone about her beach of a sister who wouldn't let her do anything. Later that day, I asked her which of our parents she planned on moving in with. Cue more fighting. I managed to tell her that I had no obligation to continue housing her for free if she couldn't respect my family. Mia could either move back in with our parents or continue living with me for the low price of respecting my infant son and stop complaining about it. We did have a very productive conversation afterwards. I managed to get a lot off my chest, as did my sister. Mia apologized for everything. She admitted she'd been selfish, promised she'd make efforts to change and mature. I'm a strong believer that people can change, which is why I'm not kicking her out right now, but I made it very clear that Mia is on thin ice, and the next time she does anything like this will be the last time she ever sees the inside of my home. The curfew will continue until the end of the semester, as originally planned. My father also agreed to pay for Mia to go back to therapy. It helped her a lot when she was younger, so I'm hopeful about the future of this living situation. I also want to thank those who suggested a white noise machine. My son is not a light sleeper. The keypad is just very loud and startles him awake, but my fiancé and I are still looking into getting one. Anything that helps our baby sleep better is welcome. Thank you, Reddit. Update 2. October 4th, 2024. Okay, you guys called it. A little under a month ago, my fiancé and I kicked Mia out of my apartment. This actually had very little to do with the keypad thing. After my last post, things were relatively peaceful for a while. And then June came and Mia decided to go back to her old ways. At first, it was just run-of-the-mill entitlement. She started taking my stuff without permission, whining whenever my baby cried, and complaining about having to do everything, literally just her own laundry. All of that was more annoying than unbearable, so I just take my stuff back and let her clothes stink. Then, early in September, Mia went on a holiday beach trip with her friends. The day after she left, I noticed my diaper bag and one of my son's blankets were missing. Both were expensive gifts my best friend gave me for my baby shower. I checked every room in the apartment and found all of the items that had been in the diaper bag dumped on Mia's bed. She had emptied the bag to use it as extra luggage. The blanket was in a separate pocket, so she took it by mistake. Later, when I got them back, they were both dirty and sandy. I called Mia as soon as I found the items. Her reasoning for taking the diaper bag was that she didn't want to empty her school bag and her computer wouldn't fit anywhere else. She also called me dramatic when I told her to apologize. That's when I kicked her out. I told her that once she got back, she'd have 1 week to grab her things and move back to either of our parents' places. My sister spent the rest of her trip trying to convince me otherwise. She also tried to get my parents on her side. My mom told her she'd brought it on herself. My father did try to convince me to be nice, but I told him I already had been. Mia tried to pick a fight about it when she got back from her trip, but I didn't budge. She moved out officially a couple weeks ago. My mom is making her save money so she can pay me back for the almost 8 months of rent she owes me. To be honest, I'm writing this mostly to vent. Being an older sister is exhausting. The house is always on fire, but you can never be the one freaking out. You're like a second mother but not an actual parent, so your younger sibling feels no need to respect you. At least that was my experience growing up. My mom is fantastic, but she still acknowledges that I was basically Mia's third parent. My father was a good dad but a mediocre parent, and he refuses to understand that. He also doesn't accept that, after the divorce, I was more responsible for Mia than he was. I love my sister dearly, but she's always treated me as an afterthought. For a few years, she'd contact me almost exclusively when she needed a ride. I'd spend a ton of money on presents. She'd give me a $2 gift 2 months after my actual birthday. This happened 3 separate times, including this year. The list goes on. It always felt like I was the last thing on her mind. I'm not saying I was perfect, but I was always there for her. I will always love my sister, and I do believe she loves me too, but I also understand she's too selfish to realize she treats me poorly. I have to focus on my son, and I can't put up with Mia's immaturity right now. Do I regret letting her move in with me? No. Do I regret not kicking her out back in May? Also no. To be honest, I think I needed that. Knowing I tried has always helped me sleep at night. Plus, living with Mia wasn't all bad. Accompanying the Drake/Kendrick Lamar feud with her was pretty fun at first, at least. My sister and I are on speaking terms. She was pissed at first, but got over it once she realized that literally no one was really taking her side. She's back to transitioning between our parents' places every week. I don't miss that lifestyle. Mia hates it as it takes her longer to get to her classes every morning. She's apologized, but I'm not letting her move back in with me. My son's turning 1 in a couple of weeks. Mia is invited to his birthday party, but I'm not expecting her to show up. My fiancé and I are getting married in a little under a year, and she's invited to that too. I hope my sister can learn to be more considerate and that we can improve our relationship someday. But I'm done being the only one putting in the effort. This will be my final post. Thank you, Reddit. Now for comments where Op has replied. I'm not regretting letting sis stay at first. OP. I don't regret anything. I needed to accept I can't keep giving my sister these chances, and I don't think I could have truly achieved that without knowing I'd tried. Comment 1. Just be aware of her mood heading up to your wedding. She could show up happy and excited for you. She could show up and sulk. And she could be goaded by her friends or TikTok into showing up just to cause problems. Shredded inappropriate dress? Bridal gown? Interesting hairdo? Who knows? Security exists for people like that, sadly. OP. Nah. These things take effort. At worst, she'll sulk through the whole wedding. I know for a fact no one would support her if she tried anything more drastic. Comment 2. Dad sounds like he's still enabling the sister. OP. My father's stance here doesn't have much to do with wanting to enable Mia. He's just always expected me to bend over backwards for others. That behavior has been improving lately, but there's still traces of it every now and then. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Golden child brother accused me of theft and got me kicked out. Now, 5 years later, my parents want me to testify against him for stealing $100,000 from their business. Hey Reddit, so I, 26M, received a letter that my estranged parents had sent to me through my aunt, asking me to help them out with a lawsuit. Interestingly enough, the lawsuit is against my younger brother, and that's the reason why I got kicked out of my house and cut off by my family 5 years ago. So I'm kind of confused about what to do right now. My brother, James, 23M, and I have pretty much grown up constantly hating and fighting each other. The sibling rivalry was pretty bad, and I totally blame my parents for that. When I was younger, it became really clear to me after James was born that he was their priority now, and that made me really jealous. So while we were growing up, I would try everything in my power to get their attention, and when James was a little older as well, he started doing the same thing. Without even realizing it, we started competing with each other. Instead of discouraging that and making sure that we got along well, our parents encouraged the kind of behavior, and we ended up hating each other. So that was pretty sad because I really do feel like James and I could have grown up normally if our parents hadn't encouraged our sibling rivalry. The cherry on top of that was that no matter how much I tried, it seemed like my parents were always going to prefer James over me. He was their golden son who could never do anything wrong, and it was pretty obvious to me after one point, and that made me resent him even more. Eventually, the fights were not childish and petty anymore. They were really nasty. After one such fight 5 years ago, he decided to make some false accusations of theft against me and got me kicked out of the house. I had been home back from college during the holidays, and I don't even remember what we had fought about, but I remember that the next evening, he started throwing a tantrum about how his card had gone missing earlier that day and forced everyone to look all over the house for it. Obviously, we couldn't find it anywhere, and then while he was looking for it in my room, he found it in my wallet and started screaming about how I had stolen his card. I was pretty sure that he was the one who planted it in my wallet, so I started to deny his accusations, but then he said that he did not trust me and pushed me out of my room and locked me out so he could go through my belongings and see if I had purchased anything new with his money. My parents did not even intervene, even though this was extremely humiliating and unnecessary, because even if I had stolen his card like he said, I certainly wouldn't even have known how to access his funds. That was just common sense, but I don't think anybody from my family possesses that. Anyway, I thought finding his card in my wallet would be the worst of it, but then a couple of minutes later, he came out of my room with a brand new MacBook and started accusing me of buying that with his money because he had just checked his bank account and said that I had practically drained it. I don't know how much money he had to begin with, but the MacBook that he had bought, claiming that it had been me, couldn't have cost more than $1,500, And I know that for a fact since I had been researching and planning to buy that for myself, but with my own money, of course. Anyway, when he brought that out of my room and started saying that I had hidden it very carefully under my bed so that nobody would be able to find it, I started denying it and we started fighting again. I could hardly believe that he had pulled off something like this because by then I was totally sure that he had planted that card and the MacBook in my room at some point, and now he was going out of his way to get me into hot water with our parents. While we were arguing and I was trying to defend myself with all the right logic and stuff, like the fact that I didn't even know how to access his money and his card being on me meant absolutely nothing, my parents did not say anything. They stayed quiet for a while, but then James started crying and accusing me of spending his hard-earned money without his consent, which was apparently breaking his heart because he had been saving up to buy a car that year. As usual, his tears were all that was needed for my parents to immediately decide whose side they were on. As soon as he started crying, they went into parent mode and started consoling him as if some great tragedy had taken place in his life. I couldn't even believe that they were buying his act, and I even told him that he was the one who had planned all of this, so he did not deserve the sympathy. But at that point, my parents told me that they had had enough of me bullying my brother and this was the last straw. I had no idea what they meant by that and I was still trying to defend myself. But my parents then told me that they did not want to hear me out at all because they were sure that James would not lie about something like this. They told me that they were really ashamed of the fact that they had raised a thief like me, and then finally, they asked me to pack my things and leave the house immediately. Even after they told me to leave, I tried to reason with them and explain to them that I hadn't done anything that I was being accused of and that James was lying to them. But they were just not interested. They had decided that I was a thief and now they wanted me to leave the house and were also going to cut off the funds that they had been sending me so far, so I wouldn't even be able to pay for my tuition in my final year of college. I did have some money saved aside, but that was barely enough to cover anything, and so I put up a fight to prevent myself from getting kicked out, but I couldn't do it. Eventually, I had to leave that day, and I landed up at my aunt's house. I explained the situation to her, and she was very understanding about it. She and her husband pulled together some money, and it was enough to cover my expenses for that year, so I was immensely grateful to them. My aunt is my mom's older sister, and she doesn't have any kids of her own. So I guess that's why she was ready to help me out, but I did not take that for granted. Even though she never asked for it, I made sure that I started paying her back as soon as I got my first job. I'm pretty sure it would have taken me way longer to graduate had she and my uncle chosen not to help me out at the time. For the past 5 years, I haven't been in touch with my family, but I make an appointment to speak to my aunt and uncle almost every week. I wasn't very close to the rest of my family anyway, so I hardly have any contact with anybody else and I'm not very active on social media either. So it's just my aunt and a couple of old friends who know where I live and what I've been up to in the past 5 years. Thankfully, life hasn't actually been bad, and I'm doing well enough for myself. I don't miss my family at all because, honestly, I've come to terms with the fact that they never loved me and definitely not enough to question my brother's intentions. I did not want to know anything about them because I was just not interested, so I told everybody in my life that even if they did find out anything about my parents and James and what they were up to, I did not want to hear it. I wanted to move on without any of them in my life, and that's what I have done. So I have never looked back after I got kicked out, and it wasn't until recently that I found out what was going on with my family, only because of the letter that they sent to me through my aunt. Everybody in my life had the strictest instructions that they were not allowed to speak to my family about my whereabouts and give out my contact info. So that's why my aunt hadn't told them anything about my address or how to contact me when they had visited her to ask about me. Because of that, they couldn't contact me directly, so they left a letter with her and she brought it to me. In that letter, my parents told me that they were really sorry for how they had treated me in the past and they had started to see that James was not the perfect son that they thought they had raised. Apparently, lots of things had gone wrong after I got kicked out of the family. James had decided to take a gap year after high school, but then it turned into another year and all of a sudden, he had just wasted 3 years of his life doing nothing but partying with his friends every weekend and playing video games all day. He hadn't even bothered to take up any jobs and lived off his parents, even though they tried to get him to do something about this. And then, 2 years back, my dad started his own business and it took up a lot of money, so they gave my brother an ultimatum and told him that he needed to find a job or else he would get kicked out. James then had the genius idea of asking his dad to hire him, and after some discussion, my parents agreed to do that because then they could train him to take over in the future. For a couple of months, things went smoothly, and he even got a place of his own with the money that he had been making working with our dad. But then my dad started to notice discrepancies in the accounts, and since my brother was responsible for it, he questioned him, and my brother admitted that he had been stealing some money for a few weeks, but he had never thought that he would get caught because he didn't think it was significant enough to come under the radar. This was almost a year ago, and my parents had been very upset, but they had forgiven him and didn't even fire him. I don't know why they would do that, because that just showed him that he could get away with whatever he wanted because they were more concerned about their family and reputation and stuff like that. So he did stuff like this again, and once again, when he was caught, he apologized profusely and started begging my parents not to fire him, and once again it worked. But like they say, the third time's the charm, and this time, a few weeks back when he was caught stealing from the company again, my parents decided to fire him and file a lawsuit against him for embezzlement. They had decided to skip the mediation because they did not want to settle out of court. They wanted this to go to trial so they could get him to return all their money and also have him punished for whatever he had been putting them through. And they were writing to me not just because they wanted to acknowledge their mistakes, but because they wanted me to help them out by testifying against my brother. It had taken them 5 years to realize that I had been telling the truth that day, and that I obviously hadn't stolen my brother's card to buy a MacBook for myself. They were finally ready to accept that maybe he had created that situation just to get me in trouble. But now it's not enough anymore. From the letter, I figured out that after I got kicked out, my brother had an extremely easy life. He had been working part-time jobs in high school, but once he had framed me and got kicked out, I guess my parents went soft on him, and that's why they allowed him to quit working altogether for almost 3 years. And he got to be lazy and do nothing while I was out here juggling work and education so that I could pay back my aunt eventually and go ahead in life. It felt extremely unfair, and an apology was not going to fix that. So that letter really didn't mean much to me. Besides, I know that they are writing to me because they need my help to testify against my brother and have him punished, but I don't think they would have ever needed to take things so far if they had disciplined my brother in the past. I don't even know if they actually mean their apology or if it's just because they want me to help them out, and even if it was genuine, I have my work and my life to think about and I don't want to disturb that. I'm happy with everything the way it is, and I'm really not interested in going back to my family drama because the past 5 years have been lonely but peaceful, and that's exactly how I want it. I know that this is an excellent opportunity to get back at my brother for everything that he did, and it's great that my parents have finally realized that he's not a good person and are willing to punish him for it. But for me, it's too little, too late, and I'm not interested in helping them out. However, the only thing that has been holding me back right now from telling my parents that I'm not willing to help them out is the fact that I know that my testimony will make the biggest difference of all, and I don't know if opting to stay out of this would be the right thing to do given the circumstances. I just feel very strangely guilty. So, am I the asshole for not wanting to help my parents out to sue my brother? Date 1. Hey, so it's been a couple of days since I posted, and yesterday, I spoke to my aunt and I told her that I wanted her to tell my parents that I was not going to be helping them out. I realized that I like my life the way that it is, and I don't want to get back in touch with my parents and stuff. I really hope that they are able to bring my brother to justice and things work out for them, but I don't want to be a part of it. I knew for a fact that if I decided to help them out, I would have to talk to them and maybe they would end up back in my life, which is not something I'm looking forward to right now because I don't think I've forgiven them. Also, be it to punish him or not, I don't want anything to do with my brother. So there. When I told my aunt about my decision, she told me that she thought I was doing the right thing even if it was going to make things slightly difficult for my parents. But honestly, in the past 5 years, they had never cared about how difficult things have been for me, so I don't need to sit and think about that either. My aunt is not particularly fond of my parents, honestly. She never has been. Unlike the rest of the family, she couldn't pretend that she couldn't see how openly they favored James over me and how frequently they pitted us against one another. Unlike the rest of the family, she couldn't keep quiet about it and would often scold my parents about it, but it never mattered to them, and it just made their relationship go sour because obviously my parents did not like to be told what to do and how to raise their children. So my aunt and my mother didn't have a particularly good relationship either, and after I got kicked out, my aunt stopped attending any of their events because she wanted nothing to do with them, and even they had very low contact for the past 5 years. My aunt also told me that when my parents had come to visit her and talk to her about me and what I had been up to, they had barely asked anything about me. They were mostly just talking about how difficult things have been for them with my brother and everything and how they need my help. She could tell that even now, they hardly even cared about me and only wanted to apologize so they could get me to help them out. But she hadn't told me about it earlier because she did not want to influence my opinions and she wanted my decision to be my own, and I understand and appreciate that. Anyway, that just reinforced the fact that I have made the right decision about staying away. Update 2. Hello, so I'm back after almost 3 days of my last post since my parents decided to reach out to me directly this time. Somehow, they were able to find my account on Facebook and they reached out to me there. They sent me a message saying that they were really desperate to talk to me because they had heard from my aunt that I was not willing to help them out, and that was really disappointing for them because they were counting on me. At first, I did not respond, so they kept sending me messages telling me that it was not like they were only contacting me because of the lawsuit. They had apparently wanted to reach out to me for a while now, but unfortunately, they had never found the spine to do so because of how they had treated me in the past and they were ashamed of themselves. However, now they had realized how wrong they were and they wanted me to be the bigger person and forgive them. They even told me that in the past few months, ever since my brother had started acting out, they had realized that they had made a huge mistake by kicking me out and cutting me off, and they had even told my brother about it. I don't know why they were saying that to me. I guess they didn't realize that for me, this is not about me and James. This is about me and my parents. I never had any expectations from James in the first place. He was just a jerk from the get-go, but I did expect a certain amount of love and affection from my parents at least, and they failed to provide that to me. So after everything that they have put me through emotionally, I don't feel the need to help them out or respond to their messages. And since they had been messaging me non-stop for the past 2 days, I decided to block them. Earlier, I replied to them saying that I was really not interested and I did not appreciate the fact that they were trying to guilt-trip me into getting involved. So I was blocking them, and I would appreciate it if they did not try to contact me again and left me alone. I don't know if this is going to be effective because I'm sure that they will find another way to contact me. But for now, this works. From what I know, they have also been badgering my aunt about me and telling her to talk to me and get me to agree to help them out somehow. But even she's been ignoring them. I don't even understand why they are so desperate to have me testify against my brother because as far as I'm concerned, I think they have enough proof against him to manage to deal with this without my help. I'm guessing it's just them trying to be on the safe side, or maybe they just want me back because now that they are losing one son, they probably want their backup son or something. Update 3. I blocked my parents earlier this week, and since then, we've had no contact. For almost 4 days, I did not hear from them and I almost thought that they were over this. But today when I came back home from work, they were there waiting for me to return. As soon as they saw me, before I could even process what was going on, they jumped to their feet and came towards me to hug me. I was very disoriented and shocked, so I couldn't even do anything about it, and they were hugging me, crying about how long it had been and just being very emotional. Unfortunately, I did not feel the same way, so as soon as I came to my senses, I asked them what they were doing there and how they had found me. They could hear that I was not pleased to see them, but they did not care. They just told me that they had asked around and one of my old friends had told them. This friend of mine and I are no longer on good terms anyway, so I guess she couldn't care less. Anyway, that's how my parents had found me and showed up at my house, and now they wanted me to give them a real shot at reconciling with me. I was kind of tired after work, but I did not want to be rude and neither did I want to fight with them out on the street, so I invited them in, and the first thing that I did was make it very clear to them that no matter what, I was not going to be testifying in court against anyone, so if that's the reason why they were here, they could choose not to waste their time and go back home. But my parents told me that that's not the only reason they were here. They said that they had enough evidence against my brother anyway, and the testimonies were just going to be something to add to it. They could understand why I did not want to get involved, but they had just offered me that opportunity because they knew that making sure that my brother was punished for everything would probably mean more to me than it would mean to them. But if I did not want to take that opportunity, they would still understand. Now they were only here to make things right with me and try to fix the past. I told them that I appreciated it, but I couldn't just forgive them within a week or so. I needed my space and time, and I felt like they had been overstepping their boundaries ever since they wrote the letter because I had made it very clear that I did not want to get back in touch at the moment, and yet they had just ignored that completely. One of the major reasons that I refused to testify against my brother was because I did not want to get back in touch with my parents. Yet I had not been able to forgive them yet, and so I did not like them forcing their presence on me, and yet that's all that they had been doing. It was quite frustrating, and they got very offended after that. They told me that it had been 5 years since our fight and they knew that they had messed up, but they were trying to apologize and make up for it. If I didn't even give them a chance to do that, though, then they never would be able to fix the situation. They were basically trying to make me feel guilty for not wanting to immediately forgive them and pretend like everything was fine again, and that was quite annoying. So I told them that I couldn't just forgive them because they wanted me to. It had to come from within, and constantly pestering me about it was not going to make it happen quicker. By refusing to give me space, they were just making sure that it took longer for me to accept them back into my life again, and once again, they were messing up without even realizing it. So we started arguing, and by the end, my parents were furious and yelling at me about how ungrateful and egoistic I was being. They thought that apologizing to me should have been enough, and the fact that I was claiming that I needed space was just all an act. They thought that I was just being overdramatic. As soon as they started yelling at me, I told them that the conversation was over because they were not going to stand under my roof and scream at me. In the past 5 years, they had not done anything for me, and I did not owe them anything at all. So I told them to leave immediately, and when they refused, I told them that I would call the cops otherwise. That led to even more drama since my mother started having a breakdown, saying that she had no idea that loving and wanting your child back in your life would lead to them threatening to call the cops on her as if it was a crime. And then my dad started yelling at me about making my mom cry, demanding that I apologize to both of them for behaving like this. I couldn't handle it anymore, so I just started screaming at them to get out until they finally did, and then I slammed the door shut. In a way, I'm actually kind of glad that I decided to invite them in, because I'm sure that if I had decided against it, they would have thrown a temper tantrum out on the street itself, and it would have been a lot more embarrassing for me. Update for... Hey guys, so it's been 3 months since my last update, and I've had a few interactions with my parents since then. None of them have been pleasant, unfortunately, but it's fine. I'm moving away in a few days, so I don't think that's going to be happening again. Before I get into that, though, I would just like to tell you guys that my brother got convicted with charges of embezzlement and is facing up to 3 years. We don't know the details because my aunt just heard about it from family gossip. But yeah, that's about it. Serves him right, to be honest. And I'm glad that my parents did it, even though I can't stand them anymore. Anyway, about a week after our last fight, they had shown up at my house again. And this time, before they could even say anything, I had called the cops and had them taken off of my property. They went kicking and screaming, but at least they left, and it was a huge relief. After that, I started receiving phone calls and texts from them, telling me that I was a disgrace as a son, and that they had probably done the right thing by kicking me out all those years ago, so they did not feel the need to apologize to me anymore. I decided to ignore it at first, but then it started getting on my nerves because they just didn't know where to stop. So eventually, I decided to speak to a lawyer and file for a restraining order against my parents. Given their behavior, it was not difficult for me to have it granted, and at least for the next 2 years, I won't have to worry about them bothering me again unless they want to have the cops called on them again, of course. And now if they show up again near me and get in trouble with the police, they won't be let off as easily as they had been before, so it's really up to them what they want. I have even advised my aunt to take legal action against them because they haven't even spared her. My mother had sent a really hateful email a couple of weeks ago saying that she knew that my aunt was trying to steal her son away from her because she couldn't have any children of her own. And I think it's probably one of the most insensitive things my parents have ever said to someone else. My aunt didn't seem to care and told me not to pay attention to it either, but I thought it was really nasty. Anyway, I'm trying my best not to get affected by them anymore because, like I said, I'm moving away since I got a better job about a month ago, and so my girlfriend and I have decided to rent a house together. We've been together for almost 6 months now, and we want to get serious, so that's why we're doing this, and I think it's the perfect time. So apart from the few bad interactions with my parents recently, I think life has been pretty great. I'm moving in with my girlfriend, I have a great job, and of course I still have my aunt and uncle standing by me no matter what. I don't think I need to care about what my parents do at all. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Mom refused to take my son to the hospital while I was away on a work trip because she had plans with my golden child sister and told me to keep the burden to myself. Hi, I, 28F, have had a rocky relationship with my mother since childhood. But this time, the limit has been crossed as it's now affecting my son. I'll explain in detail. So, my mother, let's call her Sylvia, 56F, raised me and my younger sister, Jane, 26F, all alone after my father passed away unexpectedly. She's been a bitter woman for as long as I can remember, but people used to ignore it because of the trauma she faced losing a husband and raising her children alone. I've been very spirited since a young age, always running out in nature and smiling at passersby, but I never received the same kindness from my mother. My sister was too young when my dad died, so I used to help my mom in my own little ways by taking care of Jane or entertaining her when she was alone. My mother did acknowledge me here and there, but that was all the love I got from her over the years. Due to this, I started lashing out and became the ultimate ungrateful child she expected me to be. By the time I turned 13, I got a part-time job, took care of the chores at home, and even babysat Jane, only for my mom to come back from work and find faults with the slightest things. This led to fights almost every day, so from that point on, I started to stay aloof. I think Jane was affected by this sudden change in my behavior and tried to get closer to me, but I rejected her advances. Over the next few years, it was evident that Jane had become my mother's favorite child. The favoritism was so clear that she didn't show up at my high school graduation because Jane was sick, but that's a story for another day. After graduating from high school, I moved to another city for college as soon as I could, and there was no contact with my mother because neither of us made an effort to stay in touch. I still got casual texts from Jane and would reply whenever it felt necessary. I got married to my then-husband a few years into college and had a son, Jaden. Jaden had extreme food sensitivities and was allergic to 10 certain food items which were life-threatening. We opted for a vegan lifestyle after the doctor's recommendation, and things were going okay. I was still in contact with Jane during all this, although we weren't close, and it was a relationship only maintained through texts and occasional calls. My mother tried to contact me after hearing about Jaden's birth, but I never really cared enough to call back. Meanwhile, my relationship with my then-husband had turned abusive, so I filed for divorce and moved back to my hometown. Soon after, Jane got to know of this and wanted to meet me and Jaden, so I invited her over to my new apartment. Jane showed up with my mom. When my mom saw me, she acted like everything was all right between us. I found it extremely weird and wanted to talk about it, but seeing how happy Jaden was to have new company, I let it go for the moment. Later, when Jaden was asleep, we got to talking, and I confronted my mother about the no contact. Jane interrupted and apologized on my mother's behalf, saying it was highly inappropriate of her not to try to contact me. But this was an olive branch from her to me because, at this point, they were the only ones I could call family. I didn't agree to it, but the way my mother pleaded for a chance to be a part of her grandson's life and realizing how happy Jaden was, I decided to give our relationship a shot. Things were okay over the next few months. I found a hybrid job in marketing, and my company was kind enough to give me work from home considering my son was alone. Jane's college was an hour's ride from our hometown, so she used to visit every now and then, but things between my mother and me weren't good. She came to my house almost every weekend. Weekends at my job are light to take care of her grandson, but instead, she took charge of the house as if I were living under her roof. I let it slide the first few times, thinking this was just how she was, but her controlling nature was getting out of hand, and I decided it was best to ask Jane to intervene because I was sure I'd end up fighting with my mom, which wouldn't be good for Jaden to see. Jane agreed and told me she would talk to my mom that very day, which made me feel a bit relieved. What happened next was hell. I got a call from my mom the next day, and she went on about how I should have talked to her directly like an adult instead of complaining to my sister. I tried to tell her that it wasn't the right time to talk, but she kept going, so I put her on speakerphone and went back to my work. She must have realized this after not getting a response from me, and she hung up. Later that evening, I got a call from Jane saying that Mom was disappointed and even cried about how I handled the call. I told Jane very clearly that I wasn't going to be pushed around like I was during our childhood and that I wanted Mom to stay out of my and Jaden's life for a while. Jane tried to convince me not to curtail Mom's time with Jaden but eventually agreed. I later got a text from Mom apologizing for misbehaving with me on the phone and saying that she would keep her distance from then on. A year passed during all this and Jane graduated college. Jaden also turned 4, so I could now leave him with trusted babysitters during emergencies, a role mostly played by Jane. I did see Mom occasionally, basically at family events or holidays, and things went pretty well. On one occasion, I had to rush to work urgently and ask Jane if she could babysit Jaden. She had a job interview, so she suggested that Mom could take care of him. I was initially skeptical, but after thinking it over, I decided it was the only viable option. My mom was more than happy to babysit Jaden, so I gave her a briefing on his allergies and what to do if anything went wrong. I had to cut it short because my mom blurted out, "You can trust me with your child. I raised you after all." I still handed her the cheat sheet to Jaden's needs and asked her to call me immediately if anything went wrong. She nodded and I left. My work errand was at most a 2 to 3 hour job, which I thought would be easy enough for my mom, who had just bragged about her ability to raise children. I got a call within an hour and a half asking me to reach a nearby hospital ASAP. I apologized to my bosses and rushed to the hospital, only to find out that Jaden had an allergic reaction. I was extremely angry at my mother and asked her to wait outside while I received Jaden and spoke with the doctors. They told me Jaden had eaten some cookies with gluten, one of the 10 items he is allergic to, and although he was safe now, this could have gone very wrong. I assured the doctor that this wouldn't happen again and went home, taking my mother with me. Jane had already arrived at my house, so I asked her to take Jaden to his room and stay with him, which she did. What went down between me and my mother could be best described as a very dramatic fight where my mother tried to blame the mishap on Jaden eating the cookie when she wasn't looking, but quickly admitted it was her fault for not listening to me or checking the cheat sheet. I was done with her and told her that there was no way she could stay around Jaden without my supervision anymore. She started to cry, saying it was a mistake and that I was being too harsh, but I stood my ground, as it was now a matter of life and death for my child. She left soon after and Jane followed her. I later got a text from Jane accusing me of being too harsh, but when I told her she would face the same consequences if she defended Mom, she quickly backed down. I hired a kind of permanent babysitter, Nancy, from a company that provided background check caretakers, and it's safe to say that I didn't need Jane for Jaden after that. Jane still visited me and Jaden, but her visits became much less frequent after Jane got a job. Our relationship became more distant, and we went back to the old routine of texting rarely, discussing our personal lives. I still received occasional texts from her about Jaden, but that was the extent of our contact, and I was okay with it because I understood the dynamic. A few months later, I was caught up in another work situation on a Saturday, which was also the day of Jaden's monthly doctor's appointment. I asked Nancy to take Jaden to his appointment, but she was at the hospital with her own child, so I called Jane for help. Jane answered but claimed she had a work commitment and suggested Mom could babysit. I was about to refuse and remind her of what happened the last time, but before I could, my mom overheard Jane and, not realizing I was on the call, started ranting about how she wouldn't babysit Jaden even if she was being paid because dealing with him and his condition was a burden. Jane tried to stop her, but she went on to blame me for not being a good mother and keeping the burden of dealing with Jaden to myself. I was so done with her that I ended the call with Jane and immediately called my mom to give her a piece of my mind. She picked up and began apologizing, saying she was supposed to have brunch with Jane and that what I heard was just her being frustrated. I told her that I wished for her to stay away from me and the burden forever. Mom tried to patch things up with me, but I hung up as soon as I realized her apology wasn't sincere, but out of fear of losing her grandchild. Jane didn't defend her this time and apologized, but I chose to ignore her text because she lied to me about having work when she could have told me the truth anyway. I decided to take a rain check at work to accompany Jaden on his doctor's visit and decided not to initiate contact with my family from then on. The year passed with Jaden constantly asking about his grandma. As hard as it was for me to see him miss my mom, I managed to divert his attention to other things. It was time for his 5th birthday, and we had already chosen a school for him to start kindergarten. I did send out a few invites for his birthday, which included Jane but not my mother. Jane happily attended and brought a huge bag of gifts, which, to be honest, looked pretty expensive. I wasn't comfortable accepting something so costly from her, so I asked her not to spend so much in one go, especially for a child who might move on to the next toy as soon as he finds one. Jane told me the gift from inside the bag was hers, and the rest were from Mom. I didn't know how to react, so I asked her to take them back. She refused, saying she didn't want to get between me and Mom's feud and suggested that I at least consider Mom's gesture for her grandson, which was the least she could do after not being able to meet him. I understood where she was coming from and started to feel guilty about keeping Jaden away from his grandma when they enjoyed each other's company so much over what maybe only I considered serious after Jane's reaction to it. I decided to call my mother after the party to talk things out with her. After everyone had left, Jaden and I decided to open the gifts, and he, of course, picked the big bag from his grandma. I looked inside and took out the first gift, a plushie for a school bag. When I reached in to take out more things, I realized the rest of the bag contained multiple boxes of cookies from an expensive bakery, made from ingredients Jaden is allergic to. I was upset that my mother was so focused on making a grand gesture that she didn't even check if what she was sending was appropriate. I decided not to show it to Jaden, saying the plushie was all that was in the bag, but he threw a tantrum and eventually took out the cookies, asking me to open a box and give him one. Things escalated, and after not reaching a resolution, I decided to call my mom and ask her to tell Jaden that the gift wasn't for him. My mom was ready for a fight on the call, expecting me to apologize and thank her for her excellent gift. When I told her that her gift was dangerous for Jaden's health and asked her to convince him not to eat it since it was her gift, she flipped. She started giving me examples of how she raised me and Jane and said that if I weren't such a weird hippie because I was vegan, which she considers an alternative lifestyle, and raised my son like a normal child, then he wouldn't have these issues. I was taken aback by her audacity, but I didn't have time to argue, so I asked her to address the situation with Jaden, which she eventually did after some complaining. She told Jaden that the cookies weren't for him and that she would bring his gift tomorrow, to which he listened. I thanked her for calming the situation and hung up before she could say more. After this, I fell into a rut, overthinking what my mom had said, blaming me for Jaden's health when she was clearly in the wrong. It triggered a lot of childhood trauma, and I called Jane hoping she would understand and help me sort things out. But instead, she told me to let it go because that's just how Mom is. From that moment on, I decided not to discuss my problems with Jane and to keep our contact limited. I wasn't okay with what happened and wanted to teach Mom a lesson. The next day, when she showed up at my door with another gift for Jaden, I asked her to leave, saying that since she wasn't happy with me and my lifestyle, so much so that she was willing to put her grandson's life in danger, she didn't deserve to be in our lives. She started talking about how she raised me through hardships only for me to steal her grandson from her. But I held my ground and said I didn't want her around anymore. Then, in an attempt to guilt-trip me, she asked about the gifts she sent and how expensive they were. I quickly went inside, brought the bag of presents to return to her, and wrote a check right there for the gift Jaden had already opened. She told me there was no need to be petty, but I was determined to cut all contact with her, no strings attached, so she left disappointed. I knew it would be hard to break the news to Jaden, so I told him that Grandma would be gone for some time due to her personal plans, which he accepted. I also got a call from Jane, who was hysterical over Mom throwing a tantrum after returning from my house and getting sick because of it. She wanted me to apologize and mend things with Mom, but I told her that's how Mom is and that she'd be fine soon enough. Jane called me unempathetic and hung up, which I'm fine with, although I do think my relationship with Jane has been affected due to all the drama, and Jaden might never see his grandma again, so could I be the a-hole for this? Update 1. Thank you to everyone in the comments for understanding my situation, and I now realize that I wasn't in the wrong at all. I still regret how things went with Jane, but she is to blame for not seeing the wrong in my mother's actions and instead justifying it. I won't initiate contact with her until she comes around and apologizes. A lot of you asked about how my relationship with Jane was okay despite her being treated as the golden child. The thing is, I was mature enough to understand that it wasn't her fault but my mother's for favoring one child over the other. Jane has always been the easygoing child and maintained her neutral stance, balancing both me and Mom. She hasn't been problematic or rude, but rather non-confrontational, which is why she asked me to let it go. But I guess it's high time she understands that relationships can't be maintained by being a doormat, which she is facing in the form of Mom's unwarranted tantrums. Now for the actual update. I am writing this after about a week. I hadn't heard from Jane regarding my mother, so I assumed things were fine. Knowing my mother, I suspected something bad might happen, so I decided to take a short vacation with Jaden until a few weeks passed after the incident before his school began. Before we could leave, I got a call from my paternal aunt. I haven't mentioned my relatives so far because they weren't relevant to the story or my life. Most of them have been advocates for my mom's behavior toward me during childhood, and the rest turned a blind eye, so I never made serious efforts to maintain a relationship with them other than the occasional pleasantries. This call from my aunt was unexpected, and I thought something serious must have happened. When I picked up, she gave me an earful about how my mother was admitted to the hospital and I couldn't even visit her. I asked her how she knew, and she told me Mom had called her and a few siblings, bad-mouthing me for abandoning her. I didn't want to explain, so I told her it was complicated and to stay out of it. She began calling me names in anger, but I hung up and blocked her. I'm expecting a few more calls about this, but I hope blocking my aunt sends a message to the rest. Jaden and I will be leaving for our vacation tomorrow, and I hope things calm down after this. Update 2. I am writing this update after almost 2 weeks. Jaden and I had a great time on our vacation, with me staying away from technology for a while, which helped a lot. When I checked my phone, I had a few missed calls from some relatives, but I chose not to call back. Once I returned home, I found some mail accusing me of being an inconsiderate daughter and a terrible mother, which made me realize Mom was still trying to play the victim and spread a false narrative. There was no way I was going to talk some sense into her, and I realized that Jane was my only option. I had a few missed calls from her as well, so I decided to call her back. She didn't answer, and assuming she was at work, I left her a voice note asking her to keep an eye on Mom spreading rumors about me and to consider this a warning about the consequences she'd face if this harassment from our relatives continued. She called me back that same night, and she spoke as if nothing had happened between us, but I wasn't going to entertain that. I asked her to get straight to the point, and she told me that Mom was practically begging to talk to me. Once I initially refused, but after a lot of persuasion from Jane, I decided to speak with Mom. Mom was overjoyed on the call and began talking as if everything was normal. I cut her off and asked her why she wanted to speak with me. She told me that from the moment I asked her to stay away from Jaden, she had been suffering in silence. Funny how she badmouthed me to everyone, and that she was willing to accept any conditions I had if it meant she could be a part of Jaden's life. I didn't realize how attached she had become to Jaden over time, and she mentioned it vaguely as a way to reconnect with me too. As much as I wanted to sympathize with her, I couldn't forget how she tried to endanger my son's life twice and tried to blame it on me. So I ultimately said no to her demands. There wasn't much more to say after that, so I ended the call and went back to my life. The following days were quiet, with fewer unwanted calls and Mom's attempts to apologize. Jane hadn't reached out since then, so things seemed to be going my way. Last weekend, I got an invite to the wedding of a close childhood friend who used to be my neighbor. I usually don't attend such events because I'm busy with work and Jaden, but this time I went at my friend's insistence. I hadn't considered that Jane might also be invited, so it surprised me to see her at the reception with her +1, my mother. Jaden was thrilled to see his grandma, but Mom controlled her excitement in my presence. My mommy radar was on high alert, and I kept Jaden close. I greeted Mom and Jane like a normal person, and as I was about to head to my assigned table, my mom asked if we could talk. I told her I didn't want to cause a scene and thought it best not to converse. But I had to agree because Jaden started throwing a fit to be with Grandma. Jane suggested that we sit together. There were no seating charts, so that Mom could spend time with Jaden and I could ensure his safety. Jane took responsibility for Mom, and to avoid escalating Jaden's tantrum, I agreed. The night went well, with Mom acting civil, Jaden enjoying his time with her, and Jane and I catching up. Jane apologized for blaming everything on me, and we cleared the air. I didn't get to speak much with Mom as she was busy with Jaden, but that wasn't a problem. As the night ended and we headed to the parking lot, Mom stopped me and asked if the evening went poorly. I told her it was fine, and she then asked if she could, based on these few hours, be part of our lives again. I told her that I allowed her to be around Jaden tonight because it was the only practical option. I also reminded her that she had endangered his life before and had never taken responsibility, so there was no way I'd let her near him again, even if it made me the villain in my son's eyes. She began crying on the spot, and Jane tried to calm her down and guide her back to the car. I realized it was best to leave quickly, so I rushed to my car with Jaden, who was also upset by seeing his grandma like this. My mom tried to coax Jaden into going with her, but he was too scared and clung to me. Her crying turned into wailing, and I left as people began to gather around her to see what was wrong. I called Jane after putting Jaden to bed, and she spoke in hushed tones, asking me to call later, so I did. The next day was Sunday, so once I fed Jaden and finished my chores, I sat him down and explained that he wouldn't see his grandma anymore and that he should avoid interacting with anyone outside school without my permission, especially Jane or Grandma. I think he understood because of the previous night's incident and agreed. I got a call from Jane soon after, and she said she couldn't talk last night because Mom became hysterical at the mention of my name. I told her it was fine and asked if everything was okay. She mentioned that things were fine for now, but she feared that Mom's behavior might indicate a bigger issue. I agreed and shared my concerns about Mom potentially bothering us again. She understood my perspective and suggested a restraining order if Mom didn't improve. I've also considered moving in case Mom recovers and tries something like this again. Update 3. I am writing this final update after a month as, fortunately, this issue has now been resolved. In the last update, Jane mentioned her concern about Mom's behavior, so she wisely got Mom checked out. Mom was diagnosed with severe BPD, and the psychiatrist recommended admitting her to a private mental health institution for a while due to her age and for better care. Jane agreed and discussed it with Mom, who surprisingly understood and accepted the doctor's advice. The institution is in another state, so Mom and Jane will be leaving next week to admit her. I knew Jane didn't have the money for this, so I offered to help financially, but she said Mom was covering the costs, so I backed off. Jane also passed on a message from Mom to Jaden, saying she would get well soon and see him when his mother allowed it. I decided to keep this message to myself. Jaden and I won't be moving for now because Mom won't be around anymore, and even though things have been rough between us, I still hope she gets better. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Thought I married my soulmate, but I found Craigslist ad messages on her phone. Then I caught her cheating on me and told everyone. She left crying and never came back. Right before my wife and I got married, she had a crazy bachelorette party that might have involved things I didn't want to know about. I knew she had wild friends, and that until she met me, she partied with them and had a couple run-ins with the police. As we dated and got to know each other, she told me that getting older was something she took seriously. She didn't want to continue her life on the path she was on. Instead, she wanted to settle down with a responsible man that made her feel loved and happy. I knew I could be that man for her, and I was ready to settle down, too. I went out with my friends and had some good times, but it was never as reckless as my wife. I didn't see how drinking excessively, sleeping around, wasting money, or petty crime was going to lead me into a bright future. She looked at the credit card debt she'd racked up, saw the stark contrast to the lives we lived, and decided to change her ways. I saw her mature and make wiser choices as we spent time together, which made me believe this was the real deal. She was gorgeous, charming, genuine, and growing wiser thanks to me. I was under the impression that I'd met my soulmate and didn't need to be afraid to commit. My wife was ready to take vows with me and start our life together. So we got married in the summer of 2019. 3.5 years later, I was watching a show on my phone while she was in the bathroom. It was a normal Saturday for us. My wife was about to have a girls' night out with her friends, which was happening about 4 to 6 times a month. It was more than when we first got married. At first, she didn't allow these girls back into her life, but that's eventually what happened. They started guilt-tripping her, telling her she was going to be an old maid in her 30s. Even though she eventually gave in and started going out with them again, we had a deep bond that made me think she was a loyal, mature, respectable woman. I was completely wrong. We'd been talking about her debt, but she had trouble keeping a job. She was pretty materialistic and found it much harder to earn money than to spend it. Since I was the only one with a steady job, I paid the bills and only allowed her a bit of money to pay towards her debt, get groceries, and go out with her friends. My phone died, so I plugged it in and grabbed my wife's phone to continue watching the show. As soon as I opened it, message notifications started pouring in from men on Craigslist. I read some of them and discovered they were replying to a recent post about her needing help to pay off her credit card debt. I continued reading through messages and realized she'd been seeing someone else regularly. He told her the last night they spent together was mind-blowing, and he needed to see her again tonight. I threw the phone across the room and just laid there, processing and thinking through what I just read. I felt like I became a void that might try anything to fill the emptiness. Before my wife came out of the bathroom, I realized I needed to save screenshots of those messages to prove she was at least talking to other men like this. Since I had much better credit, I bought our marital house completely on my own. Now that this was happening, I feared the worst possible scenario, which included her taking my home from me. After I took 2 screenshots, sent them to myself, and put her phone back where it was, she entered the room and asked if I was okay. I could tell she was nervous that I might have seen her phone. I said I was fine. I had to catch her meeting another man to get evidence and help my brain accept that this was real. If it was so much worse than her spending time drinking with her irresponsible friends. I arranged for my friend to pick me up and follow her that night. First, we followed her to a Starbucks where she met an anxious-looking man that clearly didn't want anyone to know what they were up to. They got into his car without ordering anything, and we followed them into a large neighborhood. To avoid being seen, we circled around until we saw them enter a house. The curtains weren't fully shut, so from across the street, we saw them enter the living room, start making out, and drop onto the couch. I got a little closer to take pictures as my heart pounded and my hand shook. Then I crouch-walked back to the car, and my friend drove me home. During the ride, we discussed the disturbing reality of what was happening to me. My wife was cheating on me with multiple men for money. He started spreading rumors through his phone to our friends, and through them, it spread until it reached my wife's closest and dearest connections. They all bombarded her with degrading insults and slander, telling her she was cut off and they wouldn't support her terrible and degrading behavior. Even members of her family, like her twin cousins, expressed their disbelief and disappointment. She didn't even try to come home that night or ever again. The embarrassment killed her. She messaged me at 2 a.m. with a heartfelt goodbye, in an attempt to get a response out of me or make me feel remorse, but it didn't work. I didn't reply at all because she ultimately betrayed me. I never spoke to her again, not even in court. The last memory I have of her is when she broke down crying after receiving a lecture from the judge about honor and loyalty. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Caught my wife cheating on me with a nightclub owner, so I took revenge by exposing them online, ruining the club's reputation, and using her face in memes across the internet. I was married to my ex-wife for 3 years before she broke our marital vows and shattered whatever was left of my heart. My ex-wife and I met at a bar on a Friday night, and coincidentally, we sat next to each other and ordered the same drink from the bartender. While I had gone to the bar to unwind from the day's stress, it seemed like my ex-wife was there to cry over her broken heart. She kept drinking and taking more shots until she threw up. As the good Samaritan I was, I helped her back to the more comfortable bar seats and stayed with her for a while, and that was how we became friends. I didn't think that helping her that night would be the beginning of our love story, and somehow her sweet personality caused me to open my once broken heart to love again. My ex-wife was a caregiver, and I worked with a tech company. On our free days, we would hang out together, either go to a restaurant or the bar we met or go for a walk in the park. In less than 6 months of knowing her, I asked her out. It was almost like she charmed me with her personality, and I fell deeply in love. And because we were both young, financially stable, and in love, we married after a year of dating. We were so happy, and every day I thanked God for giving me a woman like her, mainly because I had lost hope in love and had already decided not to get married. I had experienced multiple heartbreaks with my exes in the past. With my ex-wife in my life, I was a changed person. I cut off friends because our goals did not align, especially the ones that insisted I'd cheat on my ex-wife because she would do it anyway. I also stopped staying out late because I wanted to spend more time with my ex-wife. I just wanted our marriage to be perfect, and because I had not been in a relationship that lasted that long, my ex-wife and I agreed that we would not have kids until we were ready. We got along well for the first 2 years of our marriage. If we had fights, I ensured we settled it before bed and didn't sweep anything under the carpet. I didn't want a situation where our arguments would lead her to find comfort in another man's arms. So I did what I had to do. In terms of provision, I provided for my ex-wife as a man should provide for his family. I got her whatever she wanted to make her happy and did my own share of chores at home. We visited our families whenever we were supposed to, and I always remembered our anniversaries. Around the 3rd year of our marriage, I noticed that my wife started acting differently. She wasn't cold toward me, but I could tell that something was off with her. Initially, I believed she acted that way because of stress from work. She recently told me about a new client she was assigned, and she was struggling with him. Since it was around the same time, I didn't pay much attention to the slight changes, and I encouraged her to rest more whenever she returned from work instead of watching reality shows the whole night. But when weeks passed and she didn't change, I became worried. I talked to her about taking a leave so she could rest properly, but she shook it off like it was nothing. Then she started acting weird and asking weird questions. She would ask questions about couples that opened their marriage and how they felt to be with someone else aside from their spouses. And if I answered the first question, she would jokingly ask me what I would do if I found out she was cheating on me. I blatantly told her I would leave and divorce her because I would not tolerate living with a cheater, and she would laugh it off and pretend she was asking a harmless question. She didn't ask this question once or twice. I lost count of the time she asked, and each time she asked, I wondered why she was asking the same question again. And she would tell me she wanted to be sure that I really loved and valued her. Initially, I believed her, but it became suspicious when she kept bugging me with the same question almost every 2 weeks. But after so much consideration, I let it slide. I didn't want to ruin my beautiful marriage and relationship with her based on my past experiences with my exes. So, I convinced myself that she was only reviewing our marriage and doing her love affirmation thing. Around the same month her question started, the organization she worked for hired another caregiver around the same age as my ex-wife, and they quickly became friends. This new friend was exactly her opposite. She loved to hang out on weekends and have fun. In no time, my ex-wife joined her. They started hanging out together more often, and after a long week at work, they would pick a place they wanted to hang out at. I didn't have any problem with my ex-wife and her new friend. I was glad she put aside her introverted nature and opened up to someone else that wasn't me. And I knew how choking it could be for your spouse to be your only friend. As she started hanging out with her new friend more often, it also gave me the time to rekindle my friendship with some of my old friends and see them regularly. At the same time, nothing really changed in our marriage. We were still the same, and our love for each other remained the same. One weekend, I invited 2 friends to come over and watch football at my house, since I knew my ex-wife would be out that evening with her new friend. She was always my football partner, and since her outing was important to her, I didn't want her to cancel. So I invited my friends over. Unfortunately, about 15 minutes before the game started, I noticed we were out of my favorite chips, and I went to my ex-wife's purse to steal some cash. I knew she always left cash in that particular purse in case we needed to buy something urgently, and it wasn't my first time taking money from there. Instead of getting the cash I wanted, I found a strange business card with a red lipstick stain on it, and I was sure the lipstick was hers because it had that vanilla fragrance. On the card, also, I had heard my ex-wife talk about the name on the card a couple of times on the phone with her friend. Seeing that card didn't sit well with me, so I told my friends about it, and they opted we go and check out the place. We drove to the address on the card, which turned out to be a nightclub. I was stunned because she never mentioned going to a nightclub to me. She talked about fancy restaurants, bars, and picnics, but never a nightclub. Outside the nightclub, I recognized her friend's car, and I knew they were in there together. To cut the story short, we went inside and saw her in the VIP section with a stranger. They were cuddling and laughing at the top of their voices. From the way she wrapped herself around him, anyone could tell they weren't strangers to each other. I was so shocked and heartbroken, and I couldn't even move from my position. Thankfully, one of my friends took out his phone, took photos, and recorded my ex-wife and her lover together. I couldn't go home that night because I was so angry, so I crashed at one of my friend's places. That same night, we did a quick research on the club, and we found out her lover was the owner of the nightclub. Not just that, he was also the son of the client she was always complaining about, and it made sense to me. As for her lover, I left his nightclub a 1-star review and posted the photos and video online. The following day, I went home to my wife, and she was acting all nice and innocent. I didn't want to beat around the bush, so I told her I knew she was cheating, and she immediately denied it. I watched her cry and call me names for accusing her. And when I was done with her drama, I showed her the photos and videos, and she couldn't say anything. Politely, I asked her to go in and pack her things, and she started begging and crying real tears. She blamed her new friend for misleading her and promised to be a better wife. But I was not having that. Her relationship with the club owner started when she asked those questions. I was so heartbroken and devastated, and I kicked her out when I couldn't listen to her pleas anymore. On the other hand, the photos and videos I posted went viral, and it ruined his club's reputation. It was such a big scandal, and even big bloggers in our city carried it. Unfortunately for him, his club began to run down. Eventually, my ex-wife and I divorced, and shortly after, she left town because the whole video thing did not die down and people recognized her as the cheating wife from the photos and video. She was even used for memes. Until now, I still stumble on her pictures used as memes. It's been years, and my heart has been locked for love. I am not ready to experience such heartbreak again, and I have focused more on doing the things that make me happy and add money to my account. Now on to the next story. Story 12. My boyfriend became obsessed with rock climbing, quit his career, and works at a sandwich shop. When I got pregnant, he chose a competition over my ultrasound. My boyfriend is obsessed with climbing/bouldering. He plans almost his entire life around it. He's very good at it and has even become semi-sponsored. He gets discounted gear through the sponsorship, not money. We met through climbing about 4 years ago when we were both already in relationships and became friends. While I've known him, he has become more and more committed to the lifestyle. He sold his car to fund a climbing trip. He was halfway through an engineering degree and dropped out because it was getting in the way of competitions. His other real-life friends have all moved on in various ways, so most of his friends are just as obsessed with climbing as he is. He still had other hobbies and a stable income until we relocated. I worked for the government, and was offered a promotion if I moved out west. My boyfriend was thrilled and really supportive. We decided to take the risk, accept the position, and move in together. The new position required a lot of changes. I'm on call most weekends, so my days of super competitive climbing are cut back. I get hair tested, so no more fun drug times. Some days I have to travel to different work sites, so I won't get home until after midnight. Overall, the job has been great, though. It's laid back and fun, and the benefits are phenomenal. I'm really happy I made the jump. However, my boyfriend has gone the total opposite. Back home, he had a 40-hour-week job with benefits. Out here, one of his climbing buddies got him a job at a sandwich shop working a lunch shift. He explained it would be temporary while he searched for something better. 6 months later, he's still there with no interest in leaving. Why? Because it works great with his climbing schedule, and all his coworkers climb. In his defense, he lives the absolute bare-bones lifestyle. No car, no insurance, minimum possessions. He can get by on very little, which is financially responsible for his income, but he also has no savings. Any extra money goes towards climbing gear, granola, and travel money, gas, flights, bus tickets, to attend competitions. Don't get me wrong, I'm still a competitive climber and do well at it, but I really just want to have fun and meet people. My boyfriend used to be pretty relaxed about it as well, but since the bar is so much higher out here, he's thrown himself into getting better. The other climbing bros love it, and they all feed off one another. And let me just say, most of those guys suck. They are almost all single. One wears a wedding band with climbing, inscribed on it, broke, and shameless. Like musicians but less cool. Last time I hung out there, one of the guys told me I should buy the drink since I make the big money. When he's not climbing with the dudes, he's watching the same climbing videos online, reading climbing forums, researching new gear, or compulsively checking scores on climbing results. I feel like all we ever talk or do anymore is climbing related, and I'm getting so frustrated. I've talked about making plans to do other things, but he won't commit because he's waiting to hear about climbing. No car means you're tied to the guy driving out. I even tried to plan a trip to NYC for his birthday, but he says he doesn't know if he can go until he figures out whether he has enough points to attend a world's level climbing competition in August. And then, even though I'm on birth control, I get pregnant. He's supportive in small ways but is reluctant to cancel a climbing date to go to the gestational ultrasound. When we talk about options, he says he doesn't think we're in the right place. I've never given much thought to having children but feel this little heartache at his answer. He thinks I'd be a great mom. He wants to have kids someday, just not now. I talk to my parents and friends and decide to terminate. He comes to the procedure, and the doctor tells us I couldn't have kept it anyway. My boyfriend is visibly relieved. Now his tone is, "We had no choice, we couldn't have had it anyway." He's moved on, but I'm still pretty sad about it. Reddit, I want to talk to him about all of these feelings. We're really growing apart. While I still find him attractive, I don't want to have sex anymore. I'm afraid I'll become pregnant again, and since nothing in his situation is changing, he'll still choose climbing. He's become the people we used to joke about, the people who live in a van or a tent at the prime climbing spots and eat, sleep, breathe climbing. On one hand, I'm glad he's happy out here, but on the other, I find myself having a harder time relating to him. It feels like something we used to have in common has become really divisive. My parents are furious as he spoke to them before we left about being committed to building a future together, and they don't understand why he's backsliding. For that matter, I don't either. I told him last month that I didn't want to hurt his feelings, but I thought his lifestyle was pretty disappointing. He said he would look for different work but hasn't even tried. In the climbing mansion, an old house with 6 climbing dudes living in it near us, a room is opening up. I'm seriously considering asking him to move out and live with his buddies. However, the other night he told me he was really happy with us and wanted to discuss the future. I'm so confused. I love him and want to support him, but his lack of ambition is such a huge turnoff. How can he even bring up the future when the only goals he has are all centered around some crazy sport that could easily end if he hurt himself? How do I talk to him about this without hitting below the belt? I want to do it soon because he asked one of my close friends about ring shopping. Good. Sweet Lord, I don't want to get engaged right now. Help. Update. I didn't think people would care that much about an update, but I keep getting private messages asking what happened. I've gotten more messages than responses on my post. Apparently, a lot of us have dated climbers. For the sake of ending the story, here's how things went. After our post, work had slowed down a lot, and while I was still putting in overtime here and there, I wasn't really traveling to work sites. We were spending more time together, and I felt like one night in particular was a good time to bring up the subject. The conversation went okay. I told him I was frustrated that he keeps talking about finding a new job but never follows through. I brought him 2 different work flyers that I thought would be right up his alley. One was for climbing up cellular reception towers. Come on. Even I think that sounds intriguing. And the other was for an engineering assistant. He basically said that he knows there is no future at his current work, but it pays enough for him to get by and he's having fun. Well, I told him I understood, but I was thinking that maybe we should stop living together. This turned into an argument about chores, money, and the big one, what we wanted out of the future. He reiterated that he wants kids, marriage, and that he loves me very much, but he doesn't want to do those things right now. I asked him what would happen if I got pregnant again, and he said it was very unlikely. When I told him I felt that he had made climbing his #1 priority, he balked and said I was exaggerating. I threw open the closet door and pulled out all the camping equipment he bought before we came out here, all still with tags attached. Unless I've used it, he hasn't come on those trips because he's been climbing. This is hundreds of dollars of gear untouched over an 8-month period. I pointed out his dusty mountain bike. He said he doesn't have a car. What about the Frisbee golf bag that is in our storage container? He hasn't had time. At this point, I just started crying. These were all activities we used to really enjoy and do together. I just feel like an idiot. I tell him I understand where he's at in his life and I want him to be happy, but I'm going to start looking for another apartment. We have a little over a month left on our lease, so at the end we can part ways amicably. He looks completely devastated. All he says back is, "If that's what you want." I found an apartment and will be moving out in a week. Things have been cordial enough. We share a studio, and he keeps the bed while I sleep in the closet on a camping cot. Hey, it finally got some use. He's moving into the climbing house. Temporarily, he says. My parents are worried that I'm falling apart, But I feel okay. Sad, but okay. I still really care about him, but I've realized almost all of the stress in my life was coming from the energy I was putting into our relationship. Maybe it'll sink in when we finally do split ways. So there you have it. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.